Finally, an excuse to play every single Kirby game. It's the 30th anniversary this year, and I wanted to rank each game based on how fun they are. I'm counting every core Kirby title, as well as the spin-offs, remakes, e-cards, and compilations because I'm an overambitious piece of shit. With that said, let's get her ranked. 37. Kirby Slide Puzzle. Do the Kirby Slide. This card contains a free game. Damn right I'm counting this as a Kirby game. In comparison to everything else, it's the worst one because it's just a slide puzzle. And there's only one picture of Kirby to solve over and over again. I mean, I like the e-card. It's got Kirby and Sonic on it, so I'm pretty happy about that. If you're wondering why this even exists, it was basically just promo material for the Kirby Right Back At Ya TV show. It was distributed through Toys R Us and Nintendo Power, just to give you an idea of how obscure this game is. 36. Kirby's Pinball Land. I have no idea what the consensus is on pinball nowadays, but I've always kind of hated them. It feels like no matter how well you time the ball, it goes in whatever direction it feels like, and that's especially true with wonky Game Boy game movement. The physics are at least consistent, but they're very hard to get used to. I will give the game credit for having some pretty decent chiptunes, as well as cool looking boards. There's only 3 available, plus the final boss at the end. The Poppy board has a section with Frosty, but it mostly features the Bomb Fellas. The top of this board is just obnoxious. You have to break these 3 eggs before the Poppy brothers come down and replace the egg? Or fix it? I don't know exactly what they're doing, but you basically have to free the chicken, which takes you to the boss. Krako's board has a bunch of cloud-themed areas, but Scarfy is on the bottom, and to escape, you have to bust him into 3 and then land on the top Scarfy to launch up. This was a pain in the ass, but the boss fight was pretty straightforward. The Wispy board wasn't that bad either, and the final boss is hitting King DDD in a boxing ring. There's also bonus stages that show up periodically for more points, and you've got a live system for some reason. It's completely pointless because the boards are so tiny and you don't save progress anyway. If you get a game over, you just restart your high score. I honestly found the entire game to be extremely aggravating. Being at a boss and falling down the hole sends you back to the previous board, which is nothing short of painful. You can't collect Maximum Tomatoes to save some falls, but it really feels out of your control half the time. I don't know, maybe I just suck at pinball, but I had almost no fun playing it. 35. Kirby Tilt and Tumble. By far, one of the most interesting Kirby games out there. To control the pink fella, you literally have to tilt your Game Boy Color to move. Flicking up lets Kirby jump, and that's basically the controls. You'll sometimes push A to launch off cannons, but it's really that simplified. And let me emphasize Game Boy Color, by the way, because the tilt sensor is in the cartridge. You can't use a Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP because the cart has to be upright in a very specific way. You could technically try this on a Game Boy player if you really wanted a spicy gaming session, so have fun with that, I guess. Here's the thing, even if you do manage to get your hands on this game and it works, it's a nightmare playing it without a backlit screen. Like, I had to turn on my studio light just so I could somewhat see what was happening. This alone kills the game for me. And it's only a problem because I have to keep moving the screen around. I can't keep the screen and my focus in one spot. Now, sure, you could emulate this on something else, but this experience is so unique that it feels like it has to be played on the original hardware. And it's really not fun when I can barely see the action on screen. But I have to give credit where credit is due. The motion controls are extremely responsive, like they actually work. Tilt and Tumble even attempted voice clips, which are atrocious, but I appreciate the effort. And can we just talk about the save screens? They're all big-ass pictures of Kirb, and we cycle through a bunch of different faces. The levels are surprisingly well put together too. They've got a pretty good difficulty curve and all try new things. But man, this game is hard as a frickin' boulder. I mean, seriously, good luck beating this even if you are emulating it and can see what you're doing. You drown in the water after a few seconds, these pegs have to be hit in a quick time frame and it's painful, there's slippery ice stages, narrow platform stages, slow-ass blockbot stages. This game is a fascinating piece of history, but there's no reason to play it nowadays. This would be perfect to port onto the Switch actually, since gyro controls are already built into the controllers. 34. Team Kirby Clash Deluxe. Oh boy, a free-to-start game. It's not as bad as it sounds, but just the fact that there's gameplay-centric microtransactions knocks this down as one of the worst Kirby games based on sheer principle. But we'll get into that in a bit. I do want to talk about the actual game because it is enjoyable. If you play Team Kirby Clash from Planet Robobot, it's the same sub-game but with more to do. You'll fight bosses with up to 4 players using one copy ability, and when it's defeated, you get experience points to level up your stamina, attack power, and the like. So it's basically an action RPG, but Kirbyified. You can also upgrade your weapons, armor, use support items. It's a recipe for a decent game. There's also several locations and different enemies to fight, all of them coming from Planet Robobot. It is a little disappointing that there's still only 4 roles to pick from. They didn't add a single new one. But the gem apples are new, and they're what you'll use to upgrade your gear, buy support items, and increase the likelihood of getting elemental fragments. These fragments are essential to upgrading your gear, and if you take too long to fight an enemy or everyone dies, you have to use gem apples to add time or revive your team. So, if you can't tell, gem apples are extremely important. You get apples for free by playing normally, but also coming back to the game every day from this tree. The problem is the quantity of apples is a negligible amount if not leveled up. So to actually finish the game without several weeks or months of grinding, you need to spend money on all the sales and buy the 2150 gem apple set to max out the tree. With this, you'll get 450 apples every 12 hours, which is enough to beat the game in a couple of weeks. So the game essentially caps you out on spending money, which might sound like a good thing, but here's my question. Why not just sell the damn game up front? Is it because they thought they couldn't sell this smaller title at 40 bucks? Because I'll be honest, the $7 I paid was the amount I felt it was actually worth. So they're trying to squeeze a full game's worth of money out of us for less, and that is gross. I know microtransactions are a common practice now, but I hate how normalized it's become, especially when it ruins the fun factor in a game. 33. DDD's Drum Dash Deluxe. I doubt many of you remember this one either, because it's another expansion, but from Kirby Triple Deluxe's subgame, DDD's Drum Dash. The only difference is there's more stages, which still isn't a lot. You've got 7 stages total, plus secret versions with remixed music. There's 2 main reasons I don't really care for this game. 1, the price is way too steep. And look, I don't usually factor in cost when ranking video games, but like, it's $7. You'll beat this entire game in like 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you go for gold medals. It's worth more like $3 in my opinion. And 2, I really didn't care that much for the music, which was the main problem. Now don't get me wrong, I was bopping it out to Meta Knight's Revenge, but everything else was just okay. The gameplay is at least kind of interesting. You bounce around on drums and have to collect coins without taking damage. You move freely and have to time out high in super jumps. So it combines rhythm and platforming into one, and that's pretty neat, but man, there really just wasn't enough songs for the price, and I didn't really find any of them that great to begin with. 32. Kirby's Dream Land. It's Kirby's first core adventure, and it'll take you less than an hour to beat. It's on the Game Boy, so that's completely fine. The only thing is there's no copy abilities. You basically just eat enemies and spit them back out. This is obviously not the most creative gameplay loop of all time. In fact, it gets old kind of quickly, and the game chugs along too. I imagine eating enemies and spitting them out is a lot for a little whittle Game Boy to handle, and for what it's worth, the levels generally try different things and all have distinct themes. So you gotta give credit where credit is due. It's just not a title that's worth playing more than once. But if you did, there's an extra mode you can try which makes the game harder. A lot of the enemies are replaced with much more difficult ones, and the bosses are more enduring. So it's fine and all, it just hasn't aged gracefully. 31. Kirby's Blowout Blast, or as I like to put it, the Sonic 3D Blast of Kirby games. It's neat to finally have 3D levels to roam around in. They'll suck up all the baddies in order to get to the end of the stage. This is another expanded sub-game from Kirby Planet Robobot, and I like the idea, but there's very little to get excited about. The main reason is there's 0 copy abilities. You just inhale enemies and spit them back out to score combos. What you've seen in this gameplay so far is basically the entire game. And look, it's not like there isn't fun to be had. I enjoyed seeing Chonky Kirby and jamming out to the great music, but man, what a missed opportunity to not include some variety. Even the levels themselves all look the same aside from changing colors. The only thing that freshens up the gameplay are some of the bosses. Lololo and La 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 make an appearance, which is pretty obscure, but honestly, I have to look at this game as a tech demo more than anything. A boring experiment that's laying the groundwork for a proper 3D game. 30. Kirby Battle Royale. No, you don't drop out of the Kirby bus and squad up to get that Victory Royale. This is actually a minigame collection. Yeah, really. The minigames themselves are fine, but not much tie them together. There is a story mode where King DDD somehow makes these clones of Kirby's, and then you basically just play the minigames a bunch to win. It's really not much of an incentive for me to want to play, if I'm being honest. And even weirder, half the minigames are really similar to each other. You've got Apple Scramble and Coin Clash, where you basically just collect the things, but with Apple Scramble you put them in a certain spot. Then Rocket Rumble and Ore Express are basically the same. Collect the green thingies and put them somewhere to win. Attack Riders and Robo-Bonkers' only difference is that you attack a robot and Robo-Bonkers instead of the other players. Battle Arena is a free-for-all fight, which is alright for a little bit. Crazy Theater reminds me a lot of WarioWare since you kind of play micro games, but there's way less variety and it's much slower. Then Slam Hockey is probably my favorite of the bunch. You whack a puck around so it's your color, and hitting other players gives you points. Finally, you've got Flag Ball, which will send the ball to the other team's flag. This is another decent one. I don't know why Nintendo had this obsession with releasing so many Kirby games on the 3DS. It's like they just wanted to test if 3D Kirby would work like 80 times first. I should also point out that there's an online mode, but you can't play with your friends directly, which is really odd. And there's also amiibo support. And I'm only bringing this up because the freaking QB amiibo works with it. The most valuable amiibo gives him this little hat, which I think is worth pointing out. If you really like Kirby, you'll probably like this game, but there are better options. 29. Kirby Canvas Curse. Because of course there had to be a Kirby DS game that only controls with a touchscreen. You'll draw lines to move Kirby around the screen. Tapping him gives him a little boost to hit enemies and gain speed. It's a simple enough concept, and you can still get a handful of copy abilities too. I found Beam and Wheel to be the most useful, while the other ones were just okay. And honestly, I was enjoying the game at first. It looks really nice, and the music has this really hard, almost electronic sound to it. The controls are fairly intuitive, or at least that's what I thought at first. The first red flag came when I played a water level. Now, most water levels are slow and tedious, but Canvas Curse is on another level. Kirby's gravity is flipped in water, which I guess means he's really light. Anyway, since he floats up, trying to navigate in the water is just awful. There's a good chance I was just doing something wrong, but man, the water levels just got harder and harder, and it felt like it was because of the touchscreen. Kirby just wouldn't build up speed. And yes, I know loops give him speed, but that's not easy to do when half the corridors are filled with spikes and you can only draw so much at a time. Once I got to World 6, I dreaded finishing this game, and there were only 6 levels plus the final boss. But all 6 of them got harder and harder. And I would have loved this if it were a normal Kirby game where I actually felt like I was in control of what I was doing. But that's not the case when Kirby decides to change direction when I draw a line the wrong way by necessity. Speaking of bosses, the only one is the final boss. Everything else is just minigames, which are also the sub-games, so that's a little bizarre. These sub-games are fine. Kracko, you're basically playing Arkanoid. King DDD requires you to eat more food than him while avoiding enemies, and then Paint Roller makes you draw really fast and tap blocks at the end. They're very forgettable to say the least. I really wish I liked this game more. It was one that I eyed as a kid and just never picked up. It's just aggravating how the one time a Kirby game actually gets challenging, it uses a gimmick for the sake of being a gimmick. 28. Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. I mean, I guess it's better than Canvas Curse. The game looks absolutely stunning. Their creative approach really paid off and is obviously an improvement to the DS game. Now, like many others have complained about, it does suck that you can't experience Rainbow Curse's beauty properly. Since it's all touchscreen, you have to look at the gamepad the entire time. It still looks nice on there, but it's just not the same. Although this game technically is an all touchscreen because there is a co-op mode where a second player can be Waddle Dee. This is honestly hilarious because Waddle Dee can just pick up Kirby and play most of the level on his own. It's like the devs knew this game wasn't that great, so there's kind of an option to just play normally. There's also a few other changes worth bringing up too, like there's more than one boss. Yeah, there's 4 of them, and 3 basically repeat themselves twice. I know, they were really wilding out this time. And then there's the final boss. And for some reason, this final boss, Glacia and Darkcrafter, is simply fantastic. The touchscreen is used in such a fair yet challenging way. You gotta knock back bombs at Glacia to remove her shield, and then for Darkcrafter, you fly around as a missile and build up stars to use a charge attack. It's one of the few times the game feels genuinely fun, because it really isn't half the time. Like Canvas Curse, the last few worlds are just miserable. Like last time, the water levels are extremely awkward to navigate. They still have the flipped gravity bullshit, but the levels are slightly more tolerable for one reason, and that's the gamepad itself. Because of the wider screen, it's a little bit easier to see what's coming up and your hand doesn't get in the way as often. Worlds 5 through 7 are frustrating for all the same reasons as before, and some of the levels are even worse. Like there's one in World 7 where you have to be in this blue light to wait for platforms to move, and what's annoying about that is Kirby coming to a full stop requires vertical lines or holding him down. It's just more irritating than it needs to be. For 6-1, the game asked if I wanted to skip the level, and guess what? I did, because I was fed up with it, and I never give up on levels unless I feel like it's out of my control. The music really isn't that great either. Like, yeah, you can unlock some great remixes, but in-game, most of it is very forgettable. The invincibility music, as an example, is awful. Take a listen. Yeah, why is it so calming? It makes no sense. On top of that, you can no longer stun enemies by tapping. You have to tap Kirby to attack. I thought I was going to hate this change, but honestly, it didn't make much of a difference. But what did is the lack of copy abilities. They removed them entirely and replaced them with 3 transformations that show up periodically. Kirby Tank is awful. He's so freaking slow that I'd fall asleep if there weren't so many enemies to take out. Submarine Kirby is fine. You'll tap to move him through the water, and frankly, I wish that's how Kirby controlled in general. Then Kirby Rocket is probably the best. He continuously moves in one direction and is much easier to waggle around. So they're just okay replacements. But what about the other modes? Well, there's challenge mode. You get chests in tiny levels as fast as you can, and that's it. There's no sub-games, and the only other thing to do is look at the figurines and listen to music you've collected. I honestly hope we never get another Kirby game like this. I'm pretty over them for like forever at this point. 27. Kirby Fighters Deluxe. Like DDD's Drum Dash, Kirby Fighters also has an expansion. It's probably still not worth it for the price, but at least there's more stuff to do. It's basically a light version of Smash Bros, but with a damage meter instead of racking up percent. Kirby Fighters Deluxe adds team battles, as well as a few new stages. The single player is very similar to classic mode in Smash Bros. You go through a series of rounds where you'll fight other Kirbys, bosses, and team fights. The combat is pretty simple. You basically pick a copy ability and stick with it for the entire duration. Finishing single player rewards you with an alt-colored hat, which for this game isn't that interesting, but damn would this be amazing for Smash Bros. Imagine unlocking alt costumes for getting certain scores in classic mode, home run contests, multi-man. That would be sick, but I'm way off topic now. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of strategy unless you're playing with hazards and items off. So I guess again, that's akin to Smash Bros, but the odds of getting friends together to play multiplayer seriously is slim to none. And even then, you have very little attack options, so there wouldn't be much point. The items come from Triple Deluxe, which is a fun nod, and the music is pretty solid. I really don't like the stage hazards. You got hands that push you towards the front of the screen, these hammers that smash down, and entire bosses just attacking. It's a bit much, but for what this game is, it's alright. 26. Kirby's Avalanche. Wow, it's Puyo Puyo. Puyo Puyo. Kirby would say that. And I mean that quite literally, but with some Kirby sprites thrown in and remix music. If you've never played Puyo Puyo, the idea is to match up 4 of the same colored blobs for them to disappear. If you already like this puzzle game, then you'll probably like Kirby's Avalanche. This one isn't really for me. I'm more of a Tetris guy myself. I just like hearing Kirby talk.
Waddle dee.
I mean, just perfection, isn't it? 25. Kirby's Star Stacker. Look at that cute little wave on the title screen. Best game ever, just like that. So this is another puzzle game. The main idea is to make matches of 2 or more, but matches don't work with stars. To get rid of those, you have to make the same kind of matches with stars in between the animals so they'll disappear. Of all the puzzle games I've played in my life, I don't think I've tried one quite like this, so points for being something different. It can be a bit addicting to play too. It's got some decent music and a few different modes. This is one of those games that I would love to play again if it were remastered on modern hardware, but probably won't go back to because it's on the Game Boy. Honestly, I just liked all the adorable Kirby art. 24. Kirby's Dream Course. People tend to shit on the Virtual Console Switch Online, but I have to admit that I would never have had the pleasure of playing Kirby's Dream Course multiplayer without it. It calls itself a golf game, but it's so drastically different that it's honestly in its own category. You do technically still get Kirby into the hole, but the game throws in copy abilities and enemies to spice things up. And actually, there is no hole until all but one enemy is defeated. That's when it spawns. This is an amazing concept for a golf game, because because you can never really anticipate where the hole is going to be exactly. It's a fine enough single player game, but it really shines when playing with someone else. I can't tell you how much fun it is trying to beat your friend into getting into a hole first, or psyching them out with which enemies you're going to hit. It's a great time if you're playing in 2-player, but otherwise there isn't much else here. 23. Super Kirby Clash. Wow, it's the third time Team Kirby Clash has been reiterated, but now it's on the Switch in glorious HD. Right off the bat, I noticed the game runs at 30 frames per second. It's not the end of the world, but the previous 2 games were running in 60 frames, and some of the menus run in 60, so it's a bit of an awkward scenario. There's also barely any new content outside of more missions, stickers in the item shop, and some new bosses. However, you probably won't need to buy any gem apples because of Party Quest. This is an online mode where you can play the game with friends or random people, and you get a separate Viger for both. So by playing offline and online, and thanks to the bevy of new missions, you probably won't find a reason to buy any microtransactions. So at least that's something you don't have to worry about. I still think it's ridiculous that they didn't add a single new role again. It's the same 4 from the previous 2 games, but whatever at this point, the game is still fun for what it is, and this is the best version of this Kirby Clash subseries. 22. Kirby's Dream Land 2. I'm still blown away that this is running on a Game Boy. Dream Land 1 seemed to barely work and was so limited, and Dream Land 2 came out after Kirby's Adventure and managed to include copy abilities. There may only be 8, but that is one hell of an achievement. The technical prowess it must have taken for this to work is simply immaculate. And honestly, the game itself is pretty solid too. It's so much better than the first Dream Land. It's definitely still laggy, which is a bit annoying, but I can forgive it. There's also animal friends you can ride on, and if you have a certain copy ability, it alters their power. The best part is you can bring the animals from level to level. They don't just leave once you exit. The animal friends are definitely the highlight. It's really too bad they're barely used anymore. Dreamland 2 is still a pretty short game, but at least it's twice as long as the first Dreamland, which is very respectable for the handheld it's on. There's no extra hard mode, and there aren't really sub-games, but you can replay most of the bosses and collect all the stars on their stage. If you do this, you add to your save file completion, and at 100%, you'll unlock the mode bonus chance and boss endurance in the menu. So they kinda skimped on the sub-games, which honestly is fine. For Game Boy, there's plenty to play here as it is, and let's not forget that one of the stage maps looks like this. Just figured I'd throw that out there. 21. Kirby's Block Ball. What happens when you combine Kirby and Breakout? You get a surprisingly fantastic Game Boy game that I slightly prefer over Dreamland 2. I'm not even joking, I actually had more fun with this. If you already like Breakout, then you're gonna really enjoy this one, since Kirby can use abilities as if they were power-ups. Spark lets you pass through blocks faster, Needle lets you stick to your paddle, and so on. Each level not only has different designs, but the amount of paddles you use changes constantly. Sometimes you'll have to move 2 at once, sometimes 4, and sometimes just one side as spikes, which is the only thing that takes your lives. Moving multiple paddles is easier than you'd think. Going left and right moves top and bottom, and up and down moves the sides. It's strangely intuitive, and while the paddle is pretty small, the hitbox is very generous, so small errors usually don't punish you. By pushing A when Kirby is near the paddle, it makes him bigger, which does more damage to blocks, but also protects Kirby against the spikes. You may think that this would make Kirby's Block Ball too easy, but you have to time your A press very carefully or it won't work. So there's a very fair balance at stake. I died several times, and it always felt like it was my own undoing and not a stroke of bad luck. The bosses are really cool, the game looks decent, and the music is amazing. It's criminal that none of the music has ever been recreated officially. All of it is super catchy and some of the best chiptunes I've heard in a long while. Give this game a try, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's just too bad it's on the Game Boy. 20. Kirby Fighters 2. Because, why not? Said Nintendo probably. As you can guess by now, this is a reboot of sorts to Kirby Fighters Deluxe. And of all the expansions from the original 3DS titles, this is the best one. First off, it looks great and it runs at 60 FPS. Since this is a fighter game, I'm glad we're finally getting that. There's actually quite a few new things to bring up too, although the gameplay itself is relatively the same. We've got a more proper story mode now, where you'll climb up a tower fighting harder and harder characters. In between each bout, you'll select items to help boost your play, like auto guard or an attack stone. And it's a pretty fun mode and all. Again, there's just not much to add that hasn't already been said. There's some new stages, which is pretty cool, and there's also online. I tried that and was shocked to not only find players, but the connections seem to be pretty good. And we can't forget Wrestler Kirby, who actually debuted in this spin-off game. I hope we get him in a core game someday because he's just awesome. You can also play as other characters like Waddle Dee, Meta Knight, and a few others. Of all the sub-games that got expansions, I'd just try out this one. The other ones are alright, but there's actually a lot to do in Kirby Fighters 2. If I had more time, I could probably be into this for a good while. 19. Kirby's Adventure. Seen as the one that started it all. Although Kirby's Dream Land technically came before it, Kirby's Adventure essentially transformed Kirby into what it is today, with the introduction to copy abilities. This was revolutionary, and still is an amazing idea for a game. Eat an enemy that has a certain power and gain its abilities right on the spot. It's pretty damn sweet. And for the NES, the game still looks pretty decent. The colors are a little washed out, but there's lots of them. HAL Laboratory was clearly pushing the NES to its limits. Speaking of limits, the gameplay is not the greatest, especially on the original hardware. It is ridiculously laggy, which makes sense because of how much is happening on screen, but the lag does dampen the pacing and gameplay, which is unfortunate because it was such a massive step for the franchise. Thankfully, the game has been remade a couple times, which we'll get into later on. There's also an extra mode, which gives you half the hit points and you can't save your progress. I didn't see much of a reason to play this. It doesn't really change anything about the game itself, and the sub-games are fine. I didn't really find a compelling reason to play Crane Fever Quick Draw more than once. Egg Catcher is kind of fun though. You eat as many eggs as you can and avoid all the bombs. It's got a bit of an addicting quality to it since there's a sense of rush to snipe all the eggs. But yeah, there's not much of a reason to play this version of Kirby's Adventure when remasters exist. 18. Kirby Air Ride. Well, this one is striving for originality. It's a racer like no other, for better or for worse. You've got 3 modes: Air Ride, Top Ride, and City Trial. Air Ride is technically the main part of the game. There's 9 different tracks and 14 vehicles to pick from. This track selection is just puny, especially for GameCube standards. F-Zero GX and even Double Dash had a bigger selection than this. The vehicles, however, are where things get interesting. Each one controls differently, and I mean very differently. The Warp Star kind of behaves like normal, the Wagon Star doesn't charge, the Swerve Star can only turn when it comes to a complete stop, the Slick Star has really slippery handling. I don't know why the vehicles have such extreme differences, it just makes the entire game feel unbalanced. What ends up happening is you'll find a few machines you like, and the rest of them you'll never touch again. The controls are also ridiculously oversimplified. You steer with a joystick, and the A button does everything else. Inhale enemies with A, brake with A, charge up a drift with A, hit the speed boost with A. Like, I get it, Kirby is supposed to be simple, but this is to a point where it makes the game more annoying than it needs to be. Sakurai, look at all these buttons. There's so many, so nice. Use them, come on. You can also unlock King Dedede and Meta Knight, but those are the only other characters. And look, I'm just gonna say it, the copy abilities don't even feel that useful. Most of them are short range, so they aren't that practical. Now look, I've done a lot of bitching so far and have probably pissed off the super dedicated Kirby Air Ride fans, but even so, I still enjoy the racing. Once you do find a vehicle you like, the races themselves feel very cinematic. It's got to do with the way the camera's really zoomed in on you while the rest of the stage feels wide and open. It's strangely exhilarating. And we've also got the other modes, like Top Ride, and there's not much to say about it. You drive from a top-down perspective, and you'll be bored of it within 10 minutes. City Trial, of course, is what everyone raves about, and it's definitely the best part of Kirby Air Ride. You drive through the city and collect patches to enhance your vehicle. Then at the end, you'll use the enhancements to complete a final challenge, which is completely random every time. Sometimes you'll fight to the death of Destruction Derby, or glide off a ramp and go as far as you can, or even just fight King Dedede. City Trial is a ton of fun with friends, and all the different environments lead to a lot of fun to be had. So I'm split on Kirby Air Ride. I really like the ideas and City Trial, of course, but a lot of the execution falls flat or isn't expanded on enough. 17. Kirby Mass Attack, the only game where you can go inside King Dedede's crotch. Aw yeah, this is another touch-controlled Kirby game, but it's actually pretty solid. Yeah, they didn't completely mess up the controls this time. Instead of being forced to guide Kirby with lines using his momentum, you just tap or drag a Warp Star around the screen to move the Kirbys. And yes, not just one Kirby, up to 10 most of the time. You'll tap enemies to attack them, and swipe a Kirby to send them flying up or down. You can also draw circles and lines to group the Kirbys together and send them a certain direction. This control scheme is infinitely more intuitive than Canvas Curse. I'm kind of shocked that nobody talks about this game because it's very much under the radar. In order to get more Kirbys, you have to eat a bunch of fruit, and getting 100 points adds another one to your team. So while this drives incentive to eat the fruit, that really only works until you have all 10 Kirbys. After that, the game just pauses and gives you a score boost, and the pausing is a little annoying at times. There's really only a few downsides to this game. For one, the levels feel too long. A lot of times you get a good grasp on the new gimmick, and then the level just keeps going for another 10 to 15 minutes. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some people may actually like the longer levels, but they do tend to feel a little bit overdrawn. The concept of Kirby attacking and moving with a touchscreen does get old as well, but near the end of the game, new ideas are brought to the table which help alleviate this issue. My favorite level about being this tank one, where you'll fire your team of Kirby as fireballs to get through the level. I also love the Wispy Woods level, where he's an obstacle instead of a boss, and you have to ride his trunk over some water. It's actually pretty innovative. This game reminds me of Kirby's Epic Yarn, because it's not really a Kirby game. There's no copy abilities, and you don't puff up in the air, which are two huge traits of the puffball. With that said, this game is a lot tougher than that one. I found myself scrambling to keep all my Kirbys alive, as if they were Pikmin. In fact, this game is also like a weird version of Pikmin in a lot of ways, at least when it comes down to how you'll throw Kirby around to solve puzzles or beat up enemies. Now, per usual, there's a bunch of sub-games to play. In fact, this game is loaded with them, and you'll unlock them by collecting medals throughout each level. Honestly though, most of them aren't worth your time. Field Frenzy, Dash Course, Kirby Brawl Ball, and Kirby Curtain Call are one-and-done deals. Straddle Patrol, on the other hand, is one of my favorite sub-games of all time. It's a 20-minute space shooter where you'll collect Kirbys to get stronger and defeat enemies and bosses. The main challenge is that dragging the Kirbys around the screen is a little laggy, so you have to prepare for that ahead of time, and it's actually really fun. But this mode was just screaming to have copy abilities as different power-ups for the Kirbys, like every other space shooter has. Then there's also Kirby Quest. It boils down to just tapping the screen at the right time, but it's framed as if it's an RPG. It's not really at all, but I do like the idea of a proper Kirby RPG in the future. I honestly hope they go back to exploring this kind of idea without the touchscreen, because it's got a lot of potential. 16. Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. If I remember correctly, this was the first Kirby game I ever played and beat. So while I have a soft spot for it, it's one of the more poorly aged titles. As you can see from this gameplay, the game moves at a snail's pace. I mean, seriously, it feels like the N64 is going to catch on fire with all that 3D graphic processing power. This was technically the first core 3D Kirby, but it's played like a 2D platformer. And while it controls fine, the overall pacing feels really sluggish. It seems like it takes forever to attack sometimes, or even just run from point A to point B. It's also on the shorter side, which is acceptable because the graphical upgrade probably took a big toll of time to produce, but you can finish the whole game in a few hours. Don't get me wrong though, this game is still a lot of fun, especially since the big gimmick is combining abilities, and I mean that in the most direct sense. You can combine literally all of them into any combination you desire. So while the Crystal Shards technically only has 7 abilities, the combinations actually give you 35. Experimenting on the fly and learning about each of the combos is so enjoyable. It makes worth playing the entire game worth it. Burn plus Stone turns you into a volcano. Burn plus Bomb makes you fireworks. Burn plus Cutter gives you a huge sword. Stone plus Ice gives you a curling stone. Ice plus Bomb is an exploding snowman. I could go on for a while because these are by far the most creative abilities Kirby games have seen, even to this day. And the mini games are some of the best the entire franchise has to offer. 100-yard hop is a race to the finish while also avoiding puddles and other obstacles. Bumper crop bump is admittedly just okay. You collect falling crops and shove others around. But checkerboard chase, this minigame has no right to be this damn good. You basically obtain godlike powers and try to drop your opponents by clearing a row of blocks in front of you. I've popped in Kirby 64 just to play this minigame. It really is that addicting. There's so many mind games because you have to plan out when to attack, when to avoid the others, and the outside of the stage slowly closes in on you the longer you go. If Nintendo were to ever try to expand out a gimmick again, they should make Kirby 64 2, or even just a fully fledged version of checkerboard chase. 15. 3D Classics Kirby's Adventure. It's exactly the same as the original Kirby's Adventure, but you can play in 3D and it runs a lot smoother. I don't really care at all about the 3D, but the smoothed out gameplay really enhances the whole package. Some of the graphics have additional effects too, and a few random glitches were fixed. If you want to play the old school Kirby's Adventure, this is by far the best version.
Hello, it's me, the Kirby guy. Okay, now you totally forgot to mention that this is actually the best Kirby game out there. Now I could be biased, this is one of my first games I've ever played ever, but man, you forgot about that one detail. Aw man, the world opening cutscenes. I always thought these were so neat and charming. They do a great job showing you what the levels are that you're about to head into. With this cute little Kirby cutscene, oh, it's so awesome. Other Kirby games would do this for sure, but other games of a similar style? Nah, this is mostly a Kirby exclusive idea. Aesthetically, I also always loved Orange Ocean. Something about the sunset on the water, especially on the NES, this spoke to me in my heart in ways that no other game had done before when I was a kid. And even nowadays, it's beautiful. And also, since very few puzzles revolve around specific abilities, I always loved that Adventure says, hey, go free, go the entire game with basically any ability you want, no issues, just have fun. Great stuff all around.
Thanks, Ant Dude.
Of course, man, no problem.
14. Kirby Star Allies. While this may be one of those by-the-number Kirby games, it's not as bad as some make it out to be. The big gimmick for this one is you can befriend enemies, which is a neat idea for what it's worth, but it makes an easy game even easier. In fact, this might be the easiest Kirby game of all time. Does the easiness make it bad? I mean, not really. I still had a good time playing through it, but there's definitely some portions that are tedious. You'll have more fun with multiplayer because the levels are better built for that, but single player wise, it's pretty average. Not only can you befriend enemies now, but you can also play as them yourself. At launch, there weren't a lot of playable characters, but over time they added ones like Rick/King/Koo, Adeline, Magalore, Susie, and Gooey, just to name a few. They all have their own movesets, so it's refreshing to have this many characters as well as this much fan service. And they even added a brand new mode later on called Heroes in Another Dimension. It's kind of like playing the story mode, but everything is more challenging, including the bosses. So yeah, this is one of those Switch games where the extra stuff was added several months later. I'm still not a fan of this method for releasing games, but I guess that's how things are just gonna work for the foreseeable future. I'd rather have the full experience right away, but that's just me. Star Allies is also the fourth game to have this art style, considering we had Return to Dreamland on the Wii in both of the 3DS games. Something I find really odd is the menus run at 60 FPS while the game is at 30 FPS. It's not a deal breaker because platformers are playable at a lower frame rate, but it's a little jarring and a tad disappointing. What I do appreciate seeing Return is combining copy abilities. It's not nearly as in-depth as Kirby 64, but I wouldn't expect that considering there's way more different types of abilities here. In fact, there's 28 copy abilities, which is a lot even for a Kirby title. Some of them return from previous games like Yo-Yo and Cleaning, and there are new ones including Artist, Festival, Spider, and Staff. Star Allies also has Buff DDD, so that alone adds value to the entire package. And you can even find a secret level, which is a remake of the first level from the very first Kirby game. We've talked a lot about the new game mode, but of course there's other modes too, like Guest Star, the Ultimate Choice, and a few sub-games. Guest Star is unlocked after being the main game, and you basically play an abridged version of the story mode with only a friend helper/dream friend and not Kirby. The Ultimate Choice is a boss rush, but with multiple difficulty modes. Chop Champs and Star Slam Heroes are the only sub-games, and they're both very drab and forgettable. Even as someone that likes these kind of mini-games, I didn't see much of a point to play them more than once or twice. So despite Star Allies' baby difficulty, it at least has a lot of meaningful game modes and extra characters to romp around in. 13. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. A remake of Kirby's Adventure was very much needed, and the Game Boy Advance one delivers on all fronts. The levels are pretty much the same. There's a couple of areas that are tweaked, but it's essentially the same game. The biggest difference being the controls and graphics. If you played Kirby in the Amazing Mirror, it feels exactly like that, which is much more accurate and responsive. I especially love all the background art. It looks like it was hand-painted with pastels and then carefully compressed down into a more pixelated form. One of the weirdest changes I noticed in Nightmare in Dreamland was the bosses. They function the same as before, but have 0 hit stun now. If you have something like fire, spark, or ice, you can knock out anything in a matter of seconds, especially if it doesn't move very fast. It's kind of ridiculous how fast bosses go down. It's straight up comical in a sense. On top of the remake, you've still got the extra mode after beating the main game, but now you can unlock Boss Endurance and Meta Nightmare. Boss Endurance is your typical boss rush, while Meta Nightmare is the main game as Meta Knight. Normally, I don't care about playing as different characters in Kirby games, but goddamn is this mode addictive. Meta Knight can't inhale enemies, but he has a sword and can move around at a zany pace. Meta Nightmare is timed and is meant to be played quickly. After finishing a stage, you're immediately kicked back into the hub world and just go to the next level. The fast nature is super satisfying, and it's harder too since you have half the hit points. All the minigames are also brand new, which is honestly a good change. Bomb Rally has you smacking a bomb around with 4 different Kirbys, Quick Draw is basically the same as the original game, and finally we've got Kirby's Air Grind. You ride around on rails using a Warp Star, and it's a lot like the surfing minigame from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. These sub-games are more enjoyable than the NES's counterparts, but they're still not something I'd spend more than 10 minutes playing. And I didn't even bring up that this game is 4-player compatible. I mean, geez, they really went all out here. 12. Kirby Squeak Squad. Here's another Kirby title I grew up with, and was surprised with how well it's aged. I definitely see a lot more flaws 15 years later, but I had a great time from start to finish. You've probably noticed the graphics weren't updated from the Game Boy Advance. Yes, the screen size is bigger, but a lot of the assets are being reused and it's running on the same engine. Personally, I love this art style, so I really didn't mind at all. The new copy abilities are either really great, or at the very least memorable. The best one is probably Bubble, because you can attack enemies and turn them into bubbles and save their powers in your stomach. Oh yeah, you can hold 5 different items in your stomach on the bottom screen. It's a little weird and probably not necessary, but I really liked managing my health and abilities while playing through. But anyway, there's also the animal ability, in which you'll dig through dirt. This one is just decent if you ask me. And there's also Metal. You're invincible but move as slow as a sloth. He's the definition of a tank. He'll never stop moving for anything. In Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, there were a bunch of treasure chests to find throughout the game, and Squeak Squad has many more to collect. At the end of each stage, a Squeak Squad member will try to grab the biggest chest, and you have to catch it first or they'll steal it and you'll be forced to fight them at their base to get the chest back. While it's a pretty cool concept, I very rarely struggle with grabbing the chest from them. Usually I just snoop in and run to the exit door with no trouble. Each treasure has a variety of collectibles. There are a ton of things to collect, maybe more so than usual. Also, something that's really odd is some of the levels are like ridiculously short. Short as in the level is over in 30 seconds. I'm not sure if the developers were low on time or what happened, but it was a little strange playing these tiny bite-sized levels and then a normal-sized one. My favorite part of the game is combining power-ups. If you have the right combination, you can make elements for your sword and bombs. There's the fire sword, ice bombs, thunder bombs. It's not a lot, but it's really satisfying taking the time to create the combinations and using them. The sub-games are nothing special. They're honestly a bit weaker in comparison to the other games. With Smash Ride, you scrub Kirby across the screen to knock other players off, Speedy Tea Time, you touch the cake before Storo does, and Treasure Shot is the same idea as Speedy Tea Time, but you swipe at the screen instead. So it's not as amazing as I remembered it being, but it's still a pretty solid game in the series, and the Squeak Squad members are still an awesome addition. 11. Kirby's Epic Yarn. I love that they went with Epic Yarn unironically, but the game is honestly pretty epic. Right away, I'm shocked to hear actual story narration in the beginning. It's very weird to hear proper words in a Kirby game, but I kinda like the change. Speaking of change, literally everything is made out of yarn, and it is absolutely adorable. The attention to detail is heartwarming. It's impossible to not go "aw" at least 20 times when playing through. The level design is what really keeps the game moving. There are so many clever aesthetic choices that make Kirby's Epic Yarn worth trying. It's definitely a bit slow at first, but once you get into World 2 and 3, the game really starts to shine and get creative. Another big change is there's no copy abilities, and infinite jumps are replaced with one big jump. That might not sound very Kirby to you, but believe me, it kind of is. Instead of eating enemies, you'll grab them with a yarn whip and roll them into a ball. This can be used to hit other enemies, open up passageways, and things like that. While I like this, it does get old after a while, but that's why you'll occasionally run into Metamortex forms. These can take place as an entire level, or sometimes just randomly about, and I like these a lot. The dolphin makes swimming really slick, the fire engine puts out water, the off-roader lets you catch big air. Most of these forms are pretty sweet, except the train. You're forced to draw the train tracks with your Wii pointer, and the train is slow as ass, and I hated the couple levels it was in. Also, this is like the easiest video game of all time. There are no lives, and you can't take damage. Having no lives is great because, let's be honest, it adds no value to games anymore, but not taking damage is maybe going too far. You do lose your gems, yes, but they don't make the game any harder. Personally, I would have preferred more challenging level design, but I also understand that this wasn't really the point. The idea is to explore the game at a leisurely pace, grab a cup of hot tea, and kick back on a rainy afternoon. Interestingly, there's very few bosses in comparison to most Kirby games, and the final boss is very anticlimactic. There's 2 different forms, and both of them take about 30 seconds to finish. So yeah, I really like this one for embracing a new aesthetic. It's just not quite as good as a top-tier Kirby title. However, you can collect furniture from each level and deck out your apartment for fun. And there's co-op, so you can't go wrong there. 10. Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn. But is it really extra epic? I mean, it's a Wii game ported to the 3DS, so right off the bat, the game looks worse. It still plays perfectly fine and all, but the visual fidelity is definitely missed when that's a big part of the game. There's also no co-op, which is a little weird because New Super Mario Bros. 2 did that, but I guess it's not that big of a deal. The biggest change Extra Epic Yarn has is the Devilish Mode and Ravel abilities. Devilish Mode gives you a life bar, which is awesome, but also adds in a devil to annoy the crap out of you. Why they couldn't have just included the life bar is beyond me, but honestly, it's nice to have difficulty options. And the Ravel abilities is a very bizarre choice. The game adds in 6 abilities. Wire is a sword, button is a bomb, nylon is a tornado, and so on. Now, I might have the opposing opinion here, but I actually really like these additions. Does it kind of defeat the purpose of the whole game? Yeah, a little bit, but does it improve the pacing and freshen things up? It absolutely does. And you don't even have to pick them up. It's still very possible impossible to beat the whole game without these abilities. The last thing to mention is the extra 2 sub-games. DDD Go 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 has you dashing through levels collecting beads, then Slash and Bead is the same thing, but you stop to attack enemies. I'm really conflicted on which version I prefer. I think I have to give the edge to the 3DS one, but I totally get those of you that think the original is superior. 9. Kirby's Dream Land 3. One of the most forgotten about Kirby titles because Kirby Superstar overtakes it every time. And I don't think it's quite as good either, but it's absolutely worth playing. The biggest difference being the graphics. I mean, just look at this gorgeous pastel art style. The aesthetic is so perfect for Kirby, and even the animation is charming. The enemies and characters all have these little jiggles when standing idle or moving around. It really adds a lot to the tone of the art style. Like Dreamland 2, Animal Friends return, but this time there's a total of 6. Rick, Ku, and Kine are back, and new to the list are Nago a cat, Choo Choo an octopus, and Pitch a bird. All the animal friends are fun to use, especially the fish. I don't know what it is, but I just get a kick out of seeing Kirby's little head popping out of Kine's mouth. I will admit that a lot of times, the animal friends are more of a pain than a gain. Some of them don't have multiple jumps, or are just really slow and bulky. It's also a little disappointing that copy abilities don't have multiple moves like they did with Superstar. I understand the need to downgrade because of all the animal friend combinations, but it's still a little sad. The general gameplay is pretty well paced at least. When inhaling enemies, I noticed a much shorter pause time than normal. But then on the other hand, the screen takes a second to catch up to you sometimes. Yeah, Kirby will often run to the end of the screen before it starts to scroll with him. Like, how is this a problem not foreseen before release? But hey, at least you can find Metroids in this game. It's probably the coolest Kirby cameo I've ever seen. The music is amazing per usual, and man, the true final boss is something else. You fight a super big eyeball and it shoots blood at you in one of the phases. I never thought I'd see that in a Kirby game, let alone any Nintendo game, but yeah, this is a pretty great one. It's worth playing with the art style on its own. 8. Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Kirby drops his cake, and it's really sad. But anyway, the video game. It kind of feels like the new Super Mario Bros. Of Kirby games, but in a really good way. It has an art style that's stuck around for several years, there's 4-player co-op, it's really easy, like, it takes a lot of NSMB elements. Although for being real, it was the first core Kirby game in a long time, so this was and still is refreshing to play. The jump from Kirby 64 to Return to Dreamland was pretty massive. The game runs much smoother. The graphics are extremely colorful and a joy to look at. And there's new copy abilities per usual, which include Wing, Whip, Water, and Spear. Water being my favorite because Kirby can infinitely vomit out water, which is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. All the abilities have also been upgraded with multiple moves like in Superstar, so that makes all of them much more viable. You've also got the super abilities, which are visually really stunning, but they don't feel very meaningful. The experience with all of them is essentially a screen wipe. There's no small puzzles or challenges, you just do the thing and win. But hey, now there's items and objects you can pick that do extra stuff. This French horn gives you a prism shield for, reasons, and the bosses are also slightly harder than normal, which is definitely appreciated. There's definitely some interesting things happening in Return to Dreamland, including the sub-games. There's the typical extra mode, which is a harder version of the main game, although this one adds a brand new boss called Metal General X. The arena and the true arena return, which are just boss rushes like a lot of Kirby games have. The sub-games are pretty interesting this time around too. Ninja Dojo has you throwing ninja stars with your Wiimote to hit targets, Scope Shot is shooting a bunch of robots, and Challenge involves you reaching the goal with the highest score possible. What's distinct is you have to use one copy ability the whole time, and you'll almost speedrun the levels. These are all pretty fun sub-games, and it's no surprise 2 of them use motion controls because this was the Wii era. While Return to Dreamland is fun enough, it really doesn't do much to stand on its own. 7. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. This is probably the most memorable Kirby title for me, simply because I grew up with it and still remember my dad buying it for me when I was like 11 or 12. It may look like a traditional Kirby game, but it has a more open world approach. It's almost Metroidvania-esque in a sense. I wouldn't quite call it that, but it has some of those elements like hidden items that require specific abilities to get to, as well as multiple map screens. The gameplay is pretty fluid and it controls well. All the usual copy abilities are here, and there's one new one called Smash. This one gives you the moveset from Super Smash Bros. Melee, and you obtain it by sucking up Master or Crazy Hand. That is genuinely amazing, and I wish it was featured more regularly. One of the few gimmicks is the ability to play with 4 different Kirbys. This can be done with real people, or you can call your pals via a cell phone. And yes, your phone has a real-time battery and it can drain to nothing unless you find batteries around the levels. But anyway, you'll rarely use all 4 Kirbys unless you're trying to move a giant rock or something. They're mostly just walking around the game on their own, which I guess is kind of neat to an extent. Each world looks really nice, and the pixel art has aged very well. It's such a joy running around trying to find new areas to explore. However, that is also one of the biggest flaws. Actually finding new areas can sometimes be frustrating, even with the map. A lot of times you'll need a specific ability, and if you don't have it, you have to go back and get it, and then return without losing that ability. I do wish you could swap abilities on the fly, but that would definitely make the game too easy, so I'm not really sure what workaround could have been done aside from assuring the required enemy was always nearby. But frankly, I never really minded some backtracking. The game itself is just so enjoyable, and the music is really memorable. Olive Ocean has a killer percussion backing, Moonlight Mansion has a mysterious aura to it, Rainbow Route's soft yet strong beat has an enticing charm. I really liked collecting all the paint cans too, which let you change the color of Kirby. It's just a visual game, and it's in other games too, but this was before video games made you pay money to change your color palette, and the sub-games are fine as well. There's not much to write home about, but Kirby Wave Ride is a solid one out of the bunch. The only thing I have to say is that the mirror ability isn't in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, which was the ultimate missed opportunity. 6. Kirby Triple Deluxe. Ah yes, this was the game that got me back into the Kirby franchise. I skipped out on the GameCube and Wii era and was pleasantly surprised with how enjoyable this adventure was. You're doing a lot of the same kind of run and dance again, but now you have the power of the Hypernova Suck. Kirby turns all rainbow, which lets you suck up abilities and even massive objects like trees or snowballs. What I like about Hypernova is that it isn't just a screen wipe ability. A lot of times it has more purpose for getting past obstacles to complete levels. And honestly, just watching stuff get swirled into Kirby's mouth is really satisfying on its own. Of all the gimmicks Kirby has gotten over the years, this is one of the better ones. Something Triple Deluxe nails is the level design. It's excellent and is always throwing new and interesting ideas in your face. Speaking of being in your face, you're able to jump from the foreground to background, which I'm guessing exists because Triple Deluxe is on the 3DS. There's a tiny bit of motion controls in the game too, but their appearance is so nominal that it's hard to remember you even use them. Per usual, we've got some new abilities, and these include Archer, Beetle, Bell, and Circus. I actually really like all of them, even Circus, which is just super goofy. The final boss is worth mentioning too because it's so damn cool. Queen Sectonia is this massive bee that has multiple attack patterns. The things that happen in these phases though are just so unexpected, and by the end, you suck up her literal laser attack that was meant to kill you. That is nuts. The side modes this time around are a bit more addicting and filled out. We've got DDD's Tour, Kirby Fighters, DDD's Drum Dash, and the Arena. DDD Tour is definitely the best of the bunch and is unlocked after beating the main story. You play through a compressed version of the main game as King DDD, and he's actually really fun to use. There's also Kirby Fighters and DDD's Drum Dash, which are both games you've heard a lot about already. The Arena is a boss rush mode, and the true Arena is the same but more difficult. I love how you're given Maxim tomatoes in between battles too. It's kind of like All-Star mode in Smash Bros. But yeah, overall, Triple Deluxe is a pretty fun title with pretty decent side modes to boot. 5. Kirby in the Forgotten Land. After all of this time, Kirby finally gets a proper 3D game, and it's by far one of the best Kirby titles I've ever played. First off, the presentation is just phenomenal. Parts of this game almost look like something coming from a PS4 or PS5 game. At least the cutscenes are like that. The game itself still looks great, despite a lot of enemies having weird frame rate issues. Sometimes when enemies are far away, the frame rate is chopped considerably, almost looking like a claymation. But strangely, this is kind of charming, and I can't really put my finger on why. Kirby also has very fluid movement. He's fun to just move around with and spin in a bunch of circles. The gameplay itself is still pretty similar to a normal Kirby game. You inhale enemies to take their abilities to clear levels. This game is more of a collectathon, however. You have to rescue a bunch of Waddle Dees while clearing each level. A lot of the Waddle Dees and other collectibles are hidden well, so you're heavily encouraged to explore and are often rewarded for looking around with things like coins or trophies. The Waddle Dees unlock the bosses, which by the way are some of the best boss fights Kirby has ever had. Clobberline and Silly Dillo are highlights for having some really cool and fun attack patterns. I love how Kirby's roll slows down in time when you're close to getting hit, by the way. Not only does it look badass, but it's helpful for leading yourself to safety. Now of course I have to mention Mouthful mode. We've all seen what Kirby looks like and it is freaking hilarious. I also love the staircase and water balloon Kirby. He just looks so goofy and endearing. So while I like all the random things Kirby Kirby can eat, there are a few of them that have virtually no purpose, such as storage mode. Kirby opens up an area, and that's about it. It's still cute watching him get through levels like this, but some of these objects that he inhales don't do much. It's like the cactus or tree in Mario Odyssey. It just kind of exists for one objective and nothing more. One of my favorite new things is the fact that you can upgrade your abilities. You'll do this with the coins and rare stones you collect throughout each level, so combing through the levels is heavily encouraged. So while there may only be 12 abilities, they can upgrade up to 2 to 4 times, so there's technically more abilities than most Kirby games. I especially loved fully upgrading Ranger. Charged up shots are ridiculously broken and you can take out small bosses in like 5 seconds flat. Ranger is also just a new ability in general. Basically, it's Kirby with a gun. Controlling this is very weird at first since you have to manually aim your charged shots, but it's pretty easy to get used to. The drill ability is also new, which reminds me a lot of the animal ability from Squeak Squad, but it's honestly a lot better. Waddle Dee Town is pretty incredible as well. This is where you'll play the sub games, upgrade your abilities, and buy health items, which by the way, you can now store one of them for levels. It's not really necessary since the game is still pretty easy, but it's still a nice feature to have. I'm also obligated to mention the fishing game, and it is absolutely adorable. Look at that little hat, what a Chad Puff boy. You've also got the Waddle Dee Cafe and Tilt and Roll Kirby, but like most sub games, you play them a few times and you're done with them. The final bosses are also insane, but since this game is still pretty new, I won't show them. I'll just say that it is up there with the same insanity as, say, Planet Robobot. So with that said, this game is awesome, and is definitely worth playing if you've never enjoyed any Kirby game in the past. At this point, I'd be really curious to see a proper open world Kirby title. That would be an incredible step, and one that Kirby could definitely pursue now that General 3D works so well. Kirby Superstar. Damn, this game means business. That was impressive for SNES standards. As someone that's been a Kirby fan for many years, I never got around to playing Kirby Superstar, despite hearing it was the best game in the entire series. So I had high expectations going in, and while I don't think it's the best one, it does a lot right and really helped define who Kirby has become today. So Superstar claims it has 8 games in one, while technically there's 9, and honestly, half of these games are somewhat tied together while being kind of broken up into chapters. Spring Breeze, Dynablade, Revenge of Meta Knight, and Milky Way Wishes could have all been grouped together and still keep the changes they do have, but it doesn't really matter that much. Spring Breeze recreates Kirby's Dream Land 1 from the ground up while adding in copy abilities. Dynablade is split into 5 stages, and you fight the massive bird at the end. Revenge of Meta Knight has you traversing Halberd and ending by fighting Meta Knight while the ship is falling. And finally, Milky Way Wishes has you traveling from planet to planet to prevent the Sun and Moon from fighting. All of these modes are the best part of the game, and really did a lot to advance the Kirby franchise. For one, all the Kirby abilities have hats now. You can perform multiple attacks with one ability, and they also introduce partner characters. Some people don't like this mechanic because the partners tend to be stupid and aren't very helpful, but honestly, I kind of like that they only help a little bit. They only take the edge off the difficulty. And look, we're playing a Kirby game anyway, so it's not that difficult to begin with. Out of all these core modes, Revenge of Meta Knight is by far the best. The music just absolutely slaps. It makes you feel like a badass spy sneaking into an evil villain's camp just cleaning up their guards. You're also on a time limit, so you're encouraged to play fast, which will garner more mistakes, only adding to a sense of intensity. I also love how the commanders of the ship are talking back and forth. Reading their text as you're soaring through the ship adds this strange sense of immersiveness, especially because you see their cockiness at the beginning, and by the end they all abandon ship. It's a very real feeling scenario. Milky Way Wishes does something really weird, in that you can't select up enemies for copy abilities. You have to find the copy essences instead, which is much harder to do. While I liked a lot of this mode, especially the computer virus boss for how freaking creative it is, a lot of the levels were just irritating. Especially Hotbeat. It seemed impossible to avoid taking damage sometimes. This is kind of a recurring problem in this game, in which enemies will spawn on top of you after entering a new door, or they come from off screen too fast and you can't react in time. This issue doesn't ruin the game or anything, but I did notice it happens somewhat frequently. Before talking about the other game modes, I should mention that Kirby Superstar introduced 13 new abilities. That That is just nutty, and one of them is Mirror. This has to be one of the best power-ups. I found a strat against the computer virus where by spamming B, I would deflect all the boss's attacks almost every time. It's hilariously broken. But anyway, there's also the Gourmet Race, where you have to eat more food than King DDD and finish the level before him. This was very short-lived, but a lot of fun. The Great Cave Offensive is a massive maze in which you run through and have to find all 60 treasures. This one is really fun too and actually feels different to most of the modes. I especially enjoyed finding the save areas for the first time, because I had no idea that the music for Smash Bros. Melee's All-Star mode came from this game until playing it. At the end you unlock the arena, and there's also 2 small sub-games. There is not much to say about these. For Megaton Punch you just have to time your button press to crack Planet Popstar, and Samurai Kirby is pushing a button before your enemy. So all in all, Kirby Superstar is pretty fantastic for what it brings to the table. 3. Kirby Superstar Ultra. It's by far the Ultra version of the original SNES Classic. Although I do have to say, the intro's not nearly as good. They just can't match that super smooth looking pixel art with compressed 3D, but that's besides the point. While this is technically the same game, it really adds a lot of new stuff to make it so much better. And not even just the new modes, but the main games are vastly improved too. One of my biggest issues was the screen having trouble scrolling fast enough. And now that I've played this version, the SNES version was kind of laggy. Superstar Ultra no longer has that screen scrolling issue, and it runs way better. Plus, the maps are more zoomed out so you can see what's coming up much easier now. There's really nothing bad to say about the main games. They've all been enhanced to a higher pedigree, and they were already pretty fun before. New to the game are a few sub-games and a couple of other modes. And these sub-games are fine. Kirby Card Swipe just has you picking the right card before everyone else, Kirby on the Draw is a touchscreen shooter, and Snack Tracks has you eating a lot of food while tapping away worms and bombs. I like Snack Tracks the most, but like most sub-games, they aren't entertaining for long. However, the other new game modes are pretty awesome. The True Arena is just like the Arena, although it's more difficult, adds more bosses, yada yada yada. Boss rushes are just meh to me, but for those looking for something challenging to sink their teeth into, you'll definitely find it here. There's also Helper to Hero, which is a boss rush, but you play as the helpers instead. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. It kind of reminded me of Kirby Star Allies. Revenge of the King is a remake of the extra mode in Kirby's Dream Land, so once again you play through the remake. Playing Kirby's Dream Land 1 this much is starting to get a little tiring, but at least this mode is a little tougher, and the new final boss makes it worth it. You fight Masked King DDD, and he has this huge hammer and you're in a cage, and the music is way better than it has any right to be. Meta Nightmare Ultra is the best new thing. You play through all the main games as Meta Knight and try to speed through them as fast as you can. This isn't a new idea, but I like it in the other Kirby games, so I really like it here too. The original Superstar is a classic, but Superstar Ultra does nothing but make improvements. 2. Kirby's Dream Collection Special Edition. I think I'm actually having a dream, because this is one of the best, if not the best collections Nintendo has ever produced. They put so much love and care into Kirby's 20th anniversary, it really makes me wish they did the same for Mario and Zelda. So Dream Collection's main selling point is 6 ports: Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Adventure, Kirby's Dream Land 2, Kirby's Superstar, Kirby's Dream Land 3, and Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards. All these titles are fairly varied, so if you've never played any of them, this is an amazing value on its own. The games run about the same as they do on the original hardware, although I did notice that Kirby 64 seems to be a bit smoother. I'm slightly disappointed they didn't fix the lag in Kirby's Adventure, but that's such a tiny nitpick to what's already an amazing compilation. Something I did find kind of weird was that there isn't a way to go back to the classic titles menu. You have to reset the entire game to play something else. I even checked the instruction manual, and there doesn't seem to be any other way around this. Besides that, there's new challenges, which are basically a small selection of new levels using Return to Dreamland's engine. These are actually pretty fun. I especially enjoyed Magolor's race stages. They reminded me a lot of Gourmet Race. The most interesting aspect of this mode is that you can use the Smash Copy ability. This wasn't in Kirby Return to Dreamland. It was created just for this collection. That is insanely cool and a level of dedication I wouldn't have expected. Finally, there's Kirby's History, which takes us through most of Kirby's old games by year. To get more info on each game, you have to suck it up, which is just awesome, and then you can move the box art around and watch bonus videos showing gameplay. It's also worth reading all the excerpts for each year because for some reason, we're given facts on a lot of real-world events like George Bush becoming president, or when the Olympics happened, or Intel releasing its first Pentium processor. As random as it may seem, it really goes to show that HAL Laboratory knows that Kirby is nothing more than a fun game, and they probably wanted to educate kids on these important events. The coolest thing by far is we can watch 3 episodes of Kirby Right Back at Ya right on the disc. They picked episodes 1, 60, and 72. Not sure why they didn't stick with episodes 1 through 3, but whatever, I can't complain. And at the end of the hallway, you can suck up Kirby's Dream Collection and watch a live performance of Kirby music. They genuinely went all out here, and there's even physical stuff included. This celebration book goes into more detail with the games, showing off early concept art, a print gallery, and revealing unused content. Finally, there's a CD with 45 Kirby songs, and since I can't play them on a Wii, I guess I'll just use the CDI. One, Kirby Planet Robobot. I can't believe I've waited to play this game until now. I was missing out on a truly incredible time. It's unlike any of the other Kirby titles, as you'll take control of giant mechs. That alone is pretty sweet, but what's even better is the suit can scan enemies for its own copy abilities. I mean, just holy sh**. What a genius idea, and it's utilized perfectly. When inside the Robobot armor, your attacks are a lot stronger and can break bigger objects and stuff, but the robot suit is also used for a large portion of puzzles. Because of these elements, it gives Robobot armor a lot of meaning and value. A lot of the puzzles you'll solve are for the code cubes, as you need a certain amount of these to get to each level's boss. A lot of the bosses strangely come from Kirby's Dream Land 2, which is a bit random, but the fan service is very much appreciated. The final boss is goddamn insane, by the way. You take on President Haltman in this bizarre subspace world. Then Haltman tries to control Stardream with a helmet. Susie comes out of nowhere and snatches it from him to sell for profit. The robot becomes sentient and flies away. Kirby turns into the motherfucking halberd using the Robobot armor, and yes, I am dead serious, you turn into the halberd and you fight Stardream in space. I don't know how the hell you can top a fight like this. The whole thing is just insane, and the space shooter segment is a blast from start to finish. I especially love wheel mode, since you can literally jump from the foreground and background instead of taking a warp star. I'm just genuinely blown away at how many new and cool things this game has. And speaking of, there's a few new copy abilities on top of that. My favorite being Doctor, because Kirby gets these huge adorable blue glasses. Just look at him. And one of his attacks is with a clipboard. Like, you can't beat that. I'm sorry. There's also amiibo support, but they don't really do much. You can get some exclusive skins for Waddle Dee, Meta Knight, and King DDD, as well as Easter access to the UFO and Smash Bros. Copy ability. I haven't even brought up the locations yet. They're also incredible because they're actually new and interesting. You've got Resolution Road, a busy city in which Kirby runs across the street and through casinos and the like. The Waddle Dees even stop when there's a red light. But good lads. Gigabyte Grounds is a mechanized desert. Access Arc is a massive mothership. It's so nice to see varied and distinct locations. The music is just amazing per usual. A lot of it features remixes from previous Kirby games, with my favorite being the boss music from Kirby 64. And finally, there's all the sub-games. Kirby 3D Rumble, well, you kind of already know what that is. And then of course there's Team Kirby Clash, again, same thing. Meta Nightmare makes a return, and so does the Arena and the True Arena. They're all just as fun as ever. I guess the last thing to mention is you can put your collected stickers on the Robobots. That's pretty goofy, but I guess that's a reason to find them all. Look, if you ever play one Kirby game in your entire life, make it this one. If you've played Kirby games before, you might be wondering why I need 2 weeks to 100% them. Because hey, they're super easy, right? I think that's something we can all agree on, but 100%ing them might be a different story. I'll be attempting to 100% the mainline games only, so none of the spin-offs are included. That means no touchscreen games, no puzzles, no racers, just the core Kirby titles. And no, Kirby's Epic Yarn is not a mainline game. In fact, I asked Ant Dude himself, and even he said it was a spin-off. And it should be noted that it wasn't supposed to be a Kirby game to begin with, so no, I'm not counting it. But I digress. I've got a lot of games to tackle, and was pretty excited to get started. Our adventure begins with Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy. In order to 100% this one, I just need to beat the game. Dream Land 1 is one of the shortest Nintendo platformers out there, with only 5 levels to play. If you've never played a Kirby game, well, you play as a little ball of goo that can suck up his enemies. That's the main premise. And in later games, you can take their abilities and use them as their own. However, this concept didn't exist in Dream Land 1, so all you do is suck up enemies and spit them out as your attack. Considering what was out there for 2D platformers at the time, this was a pretty innovative idea, and the formula still works even to this day. Visually, the game looks okay, but it hasn't aged super well. The controls are also a little finicky, but these things are expected from a game that's this old. I also completely forgot that there's an entire shooting section for the third boss. It took me until this marathon to realize that almost every Kirby game does this to some extent. And it's also interesting to see Mario Land do this exact same thing. But yeah, this game is honestly just a blur. It's over before you know it. In fact, I managed to beat the entire thing in 29 minutes. And I wasn't even trying to go that fast, it's just over that quick. So up next is Kirby's Adventure. To 100% this game, I need to hit all 17 big switches and complete the extra mode. What's really convenient about Kirby's Adventure and all the other games going forward is the save files tell me exactly how close I am to getting 100%. This is going to make it a lot easier to keep track of what I need to do, and also ensure that I don't miss anything by accident. Kirby's Adventure is the first game where you can use enemies' abilities, and it's a great deal of fun. Being able to breathe fire or swing a boomerang around adds a lot more excitement to the gameplay, and it's pretty cool that this is even possible on the NES to begin with. The one big drawback, however, is the lag, because this game chugs like crazy. I understand that it's running on super old hardware, but that doesn't mean the game isn't hindered a bit because of it. If you want to play it nowadays, I'd recommend playing the 3DS one since it fixes the lag. You just need to download it from the I have really good memories of Kirby's Adventure. The first time I ever beat it, I was still in college and had the dorm room to myself one night. I ordered a large Papa John's Meat Lovers pizza and ate the whole thing while beating the entire game. It was a glorious night to say the least. However, I've never gone out of my way to hunt down the big switches. For the most part, they weren't that hard to find, but there's a lot more than I thought there would be. The reason I'm getting all these is to unlock parts of the hub world that you can't normally get access to. However, there were a couple of dumb ones to find. Like here, I had to break this random block to spawn a door you can't even see, and that gives me the big switch. I guess the blocks themselves look a bit out of place, but it's still kind of cryptic. And then here, you gotta jump down what looks like a bottomless pit, only to find a door that requires a powerful ability to get through it. And you gotta love the Crash Bomb hitbox. You can be like 50 feet away and still get hit, which is pretty hilarious. Something else that's required to 100% is to play all the sub-games. You don't have to beat them, but playing them is a must. This is another series staple too. Each game gets its own sub-games to go along with the main game. And the only one I really like here is Egg Catcher. You just open and close your mouth to catch eggs and avoid bombs, and it gets really damn hard by the end. It can be addicting trying to get a high score because of how precise you have to be. The controls are a bit better than Dreamland 1 as well, but they still feel kind of off. I think the biggest issue is the way that Kirby jumps. It can be hard to judge how high he's gonna jump, even if you time your button presses out. But after a decent amount of time, I finished the main game, but I wasn't done yet. I still had to play the extra mode, where the only difference is that I have less health. But that's not all. There's also no saves. That is kind of terrifying. Did this really mean that I had to get through the entire game without getting a game over? To say that I was paranoid was speaking lightly. The idea of losing hours and hours of progress from a few dumb deaths sounds awful. But I had no choice but to carry on and see how much harder the game is with less health. I'm basically living on the edge here, let's just be real. That's when I started to consider the idea of farming lives in other stages. The only thing is that this would take a long time to do, but it would probably outweigh the time compared to getting a game over. You can technically get 30 lives by basically climbing the gold game from the lowest to highest platform, but that sounds like it'd be a pain in the ass to pull off. But then, it happened. Oh my god. Wait, what? Wait, it saved? Yes, it actually saved. The game just clickbaited the heck out of me. The only actual difference is if I were to say turn off the game or reset Kirby's Adventure, then there wouldn't be a save file. But you can still get game overs and continue where you left off. So a big thank you to Sakurai for the thorough explanation on how saving works. As you can imagine, I felt an immense amount of relief knowing that I'm allowed to get game overs. As I continued through the extra game, I found myself dying a bit more often, but it didn't really matter. The worst thing I'd have to do is restart a stage, so no sweat. So I just plowed through the rest of the game, and after destroying Nightmare, I 100% Kirby's Adventure in 6 hours and 46 minutes. This took a bit longer than expected. I think wasting time trying to farm lives and all the lag slowed things down quite a bit. But hey, beating the extra mode let me unlock Sound Test, so woo! Sound Test, baby! but I wasn't done with the day yet. I still had to play Kirby's Dream Land 2. To 100% this one, I need to beat the main game, collect all 7 rainbow drops, beat every bonus chance, and rescue Girl Blob. This sounds like it could be a lot shorter than Kirby's Adventure, but little did I know how annoying the rainbow drops were gonna be. But first, we'll talk about the game. It's still a Game Boy title, and it's incredible how much of an upgrade it is compared to Dreamland 1. It has copy abilities, it runs better and looks a little nicer, and there's a nice amount of variety with the locations. And you can't forget about the animal friends too. These guys can help with swimming, or just getting through parts of the game a little bit easier. And on top of that, they can also use the same copy abilities that Kirby already has equipped. It's fair to say that the jumping quality is very similar to Mario Land 1 and Mario Land 2. It's pretty incredible to see the improvements after just a few years. At first, getting through Dreamland 2 was an absolute breeze, which is to be expected. This is Kirby after all, but things change a lot when going for the rainbow drops. There may only be 7 of them, but have fun trying to collect these dumb things. Let me just go over some examples. We've got a rainbow drop where you have to play through a big chunk of the level with Kine and have the fire ability. Once you get to the last area, you must take this left path and shoot these blocks in the middle. If you shoot the blocks next to you, however, it is impossible to get back and you'll have to redo the entire level again. And look what these cheeky assholes did, putting a 1-up in the water, just tempting to be grabbed. Well, good for them. The temptation worked on me, so thanks a lot for that. But anyway, after you've removed these ice blocks, get into the water, get rid of your power-up so you can suck up these blocks to make some space, then eat the fire power-up again, finally take the door to get the frickin' rainbow drop. Holy guacamole, was that a process. And half of the rainbow drops make you do crap like this. But that's not even the worst one. The rainbow drop in the 6th world is something else. Step 1, get Kine. Step 2, take him to 6-2 and find this hidden door. Step 3, beat the mid-boss and take the electric ability. Step 4, go across these tight jumps and get near these cannons. Step 5, zap the cannons so they'll drop and then grab Ku. Step 6, fly to this door on the right and defeat the mid-boss to get his power. And finally, step frickin' 7, fly towards the left while it's windy with Gordos all over the place, making it really easy to lose your power-up, and enter the door to finally get the rainbow drop. Whew! I must have attempted this one drop for at least an hour before getting it. It was so easy to choke and mess up. But that's not all. The bonus chance is also a confusing part of 100%ing. After beating a boss, you have to go back into the boss room and complete a minigame inside of it. Usually this entails avoiding projectiles and collecting all the stars, which sounds all fine and dandy, right? Well, here's the catch. If you don't collect every single star perfectly on the first try and get hit by something, you aren't allowed to try again until you complete another level. Why on earth are we forced to replay some other stage just to try the bonus chance again? Now, thankfully, the way that I went about this didn't make this too painful to do. If I messed up a bonus chance, I just continued with the main game's progress and traveled back to try the bonus chance later. It's honestly a cool idea to have these bonus chances, but I really wish you could retry it more easily because you have to beat them all before doing the final boss or it's impossible to get 100%. Something else worth mentioning about Kirby games when you play them back to back like this is that it feels like you're playing in slow motion. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when a game is really easy, it's like I'm just going through the motions. Even though I was struggling with the rainbow drops for a bit, the pain didn't come from messing up. It came from the fact that I had to play a slow level over and over and over again. But what about that last unlockable, finding the Girl Blob? So the way this works is a little strange. Basically, I need to play this stage and go into this specific room. Once you take out the baddie, there's a 1 in 8 chance that you get the Girl Blob to come out of this bag instead of Gooey. So you might think that I just have to go into this room 8 times. No, that's not how this works. The RNG resets every single time you go into the room, so it took quite a while to get the Girl Blob. In fact, I had to go into the room 19 times before she showed up. I mean, it's a fun Easter egg and all, but it's kind of dumb that it counts towards getting 100%. I'm honestly shocked at how eventful this first day has been. At this point, I've been streaming for over 12 hours and still wasn't done with Dreamland 2. You also gotta love this auto-scrolling level that's got dead ends and you have no way of seeing them ahead of time. It's another classy moment in Dreamland 2. But after defeating Dark Matter and losing them a lot because I was exhausted, I finished Dreamland 2 in 5 hours and 17 minutes. Once again, this game took a lot longer than I expected it to. The rainbow drops are pretty time-consuming if you don't already know how to get them, so it chewed up a lot of time. But the day was over, and I was excited to move on tomorrow. Now we've got Kirby Superstar. To 100% this game, I need to beat all the main games, unlock Dynablade 2's secret areas, get all 60 treasures in the Great Cave Offensive, collect all 19 Copy Essence Deluxe pedestals, and complete the arena. As you can see, this game is filled to the brim with content, and I was actually hyped to tackle it. Kirby Superstar is another game I've only casually played through, but always thought it would be fun to get all the treasures in the Great Cave Offensive. I was also feeling pretty good, and compared to the other marathons I've done in the past, I really didn't want to destroy the healthy habits in my life this time. I managed to get my shit together and actually exercise every morning throughout the whole marathon and eat well, and I'm pretty happy that I maintained the energy to do that. In the past, I would skip doing these things because the marathons were so time-consuming and I was just like, just filled with anxiety and all that, but no more excuses now that this is the 5th time doing this. But moving on, I started Superstar by playing through Spring Breeze. If you don't know what it is, well, it's a full remake of Dreamland 1 from the Game Boy. It's honestly really neat to see Game Boy games get remakes so early on, because it was the one that really needed it out of all the Kirby titles. The main gimmick with Superstar is that all abilities have cute little hats, and you can also turn an enemy into a partner to help you along the way. This is a really neat mechanic. Although the CPU can be, well, let's just say kind of stupid sometimes, there's also a really weird issue with the camera of all things. There's moments where you'll run forward with Kirby, but the camera doesn't keep up with him fast enough, making it easy to run into an enemy or obstacle without seeing it coming. What's really strange is this only happens sometimes, so it seems to be kind of a random problem. But it's not that big of a deal. The controls are a lot better than everything I played yesterday, so I'll manage. After finishing Spring Breeze, I tackled the Gourmet Race. This is a much smaller mode. You just race King DDD and have to win 3 different times. After that, I started Dynablade, and the only extra thing I had to do was find 2 secret areas. These areas had more big switches, which in turn unlocked a couple extra levels. After getting through that, I finished Dynablade and started Revenge of Meta Knight. This is my favorite mode in the entire game. It's so much fun. The idea is to infiltrate Meta Knight's ship, and at the end, fight Meta Knight himself. The way that it's done is just fantastic. You'll see dialogue of the crew going from being cocky to freaking out that Kirby's destroying everything around him. After that, I knocked out Megaton Punch as well as Samurai Kirby. And finally, the Great Cave Offensive. I figured that I would save this for last because it would take the longest. What's nice about the treasures is that they typically don't require you to go too out of reach to collect. There's typically only a few in each room, so as long as you take the time to explore, you'll find them all. There's also save rooms, which is nice, because the levels do get a bit harder as you move along. The treasures themselves don't really do much for the gameplay, they're just rewards for exploring. And some of them are pretty goofy and out there, like Captain Falcon's helmet, or the Triforce, just to name a few examples. So it's safe to say that things were moving pretty smoothly. Especially if you don't have a guide, because I have a guide that's helping a little bit. Oh no. What's happened? What? Oh no, dude. I really hope I don't have to redo a bunch. What? Oh, the game didn't save? Oh no! Well, I'm kind of cooked, so I could only do one thing, and that was to load up the Switch Online version of Kirby Superstar. The reason for that is because it has a 100% save file, meaning that I'd only need to replay parts of the Great Cave Offensive to get all the treasures I was missing. And after doing that, I could go to the 100% save and just play the other modes. I know this sounds a little convoluted, but it was the only thing I could do. Frickin' save just went away! And it took me like 15 to 20 minutes just to get back to where I was in the Great Cave Offensive. So that game crash wasted a good chunk of time. Thankfully, it didn't take that much longer to finish, but I forgot how confusing the last areas can be. There's this entire cloud level with a bunch of different doors, and getting into some of the doors requires you to randomly move across the wall and ceilings and feel your way around. But even still, it wasn't that hard to finish. Next, I decided to tackle the arena, and good lord. I was not expecting this to be as hard as it was. The arena famously in every Kirby game is the hardest part, and Superstar is no exception. The general premise is that it's a boss rush where you're not allowed to die even once, and you're only given a tiny bit of health in between fights. You truly need to have memorized the boss's patterns, and you're going to lose and have to restart over and over. The Maxim tomatoes in between rounds do help, but a lot of this just seemed to come down to ability luck. If the game doesn't offer you decent abilities for the bosses, then best of luck beating them. And I know that the hammer is usually the best option, but I can only hold on to it for so long before losing it. I ended up getting to Marks a couple different times and died to him because I didn't know his patterns, and that was just devastating to say the least. So screw it, I'll come back to this later. Might as well do Milky Way Wishes, haven't started that one yet. This mode is similar to Dynablade, but the way copy abilities work is totally different. So instead of eating enemies, you have to find the copy essences in each stage, and from there, you can swap them out on the fly. So I guess it's kinda similar to how Mega Man can swap out of his abilities. It's honestly a really neat way of going about a Kirby game. I'm kinda surprised we've never seen this style done again. So at 100%, I basically needed to find all 19 copy abilities, and it wasn't too challenging. I just made sure to explore every nook and cranny, which allowed me to find all the abilities. And that's the last thing I can do. I have to finish the arena now, once and for all. It's all that's left. I was slowly learning the boss patterns, and after much frustration and much patience, I eventually cleared it. Man, you know, the people that say that Kirby games are too easy have clearly never tried these other modes out, because this was rough. In fact, Kirby Superstar took me a total of 8 hours and 59 minutes to beat, which was definitely longer than I was hoping it'd take. But boy oh boy, it's time for another video game today! Next up is Kirby's Dream Land 3. To 100% it, I need to beat the main game, find all 36 heart stars, complete all 3 sub-games, complete the jumping game, and beat the boss rush. Dream Land 3 is one of my favorite Kirby titles. I was really excited to tackle this one. What makes this game so unique is the art style, of course, but also the way it handles collectibles. Each heart star requires you to complete a different task, and every level has something unique, whether that be avoiding the tulips, or making a random green spring guy happy, or saving some random creature. This makes all the levels quite refreshing to play, although that trippy maze level, yeah, that one can go to hell. If you know, you know. The last thing I want to mention for this day was that a lot of people in chat were asking if I was okay. In fact, some people popped in just to ask for a mental health check. That is genuinely very sweet of you, but I do want to ensure that I'm choosing to do these masochistic marathons on my own behalf. I really don't have much prerogative to make these, outside of the fact that I think these videos should exist in the ether because they're just fun concepts. So I was watching a J-Rose video recently, and the reason I even bring that up is because people ask him similar questions, as he's on a journey to beat Pokemon Red and Blue with all 151 Pokemon. And basically what he said in response is that any challenge that's worth doing is supposed to be hard and have tedium. And I genuinely couldn't agree more with this. I've been doing these dumb challenges for half a decade at this point. What's different about these marathons is that I'm being more open about my feelings, and I'm doing that to be able to create a more compelling story. So I promise you, if these marathons ever actually get to be too much, I'll just stop making them. But that day is not today. We didn't finish Dreamland 3 last night, so I needed to get that done first. Getting through the main game was pretty easy, but still time-consuming. There may not be a lot of levels, but they're all meaty and take a decent amount of time to complete. By the time I got to Dark Matter, I completely forgot how f***ing sick this music is. Oh, its energy is just so perfect. It's chaotic, mysterious, and catchy all at the same time. After a couple tries against the boss, I took out both forms and was done with the game. Well, almost. I still needed to beat all 3 sub-games, which was pretty simple since I had already played them in the main game, and then I thought that was it. Except that it wasn't it. I had 98% on the save file, and I saw a big J and B in the options. I somehow missed noting down that I had to beat these 2 other modes as well. So first I played this jumping game, and oh my god. This is so stupid, and I can't believe it's required for 100%. At the end of a normal level, Kirby's supposed to make a long jump towards whatever goodie he wants, and usually you just push the button and whatever, you just move on with your day. But for this game, I have to do that accurately 10 times in a row without mistakes. I need to land on a smiley and avoid the spikes, because if you touch a spike at any point, you restart the entire thing. The only problem is that each round adds a spike and takes away a smile. So by the end, you have to perfectly time your jump and land on one tiny smile. This was brain-rottingly annoying to learn, but I did come up with a strategy. By looking at where Kirby's arms were positioned, I could tell how far he would jump. If they were all the way down, he'd jump all the way to the end. But if they were all the way up, he'd jump close. I had to replay this stupid minigame so much that I had some of the spots muscle memorized to a T. And frankly, it was the only way to beat this. I must have spent an entire hour doing this before getting one clear. But that wasn't even the hard part, because next was the boss rush, and let's just say that it wasn't going so hot. In fact, I was getting destroyed. And do you want to know why that was happening? Because you have to beat all the bosses with no health pickups. None! I can get hit 10 times total, and that's it. I can't begin to describe how stress-inducing it was. The bosses don't even get hard until DDD, but the paranoia of getting hit before reaching them is anxiety-driving. And look, I haven't even really talked about DDD much in this video because his fights are usually just like whatever, but this particular fight takes so long to get through. If you're not patient and don't wait for openings, you will get hit and will probably lose the entire thing. You have no copy abilities either, and if you die once, you go all the way back. Every time I would get to dark matter, my heart rate would start accelerating. I could feel it beating through my chest. It was grasping for relief. Because if you die here, you go back and have to fight several bosses all over again. So after an endless amount of attempts, almost 3 hours, I beat the damn boss rush and was done. The entire game took me 7 hours and 39 minutes to 100%. Now, don't get me wrong, I freaking love this game still, but I will never, ever try to 100% it again. But of course, I wasn't done yet, because now is the time for Kirby 64. To 100% this game, I need to beat the main game and collect all 74 crystal shards. I should bring up that you can also collect these things called enemy info cards. They don't add to the save file, so I won't be collecting them, but basically, they're just cards of the characters and enemies in the game that you can get when you're at the end of a level. I also don't need to play the sub-games, but I played them anyway because they're kind of epic, especially Checkerboard Chase. This one has always been my favorite Kirby sub-game, but onto the game itself. It's like any other Kirby game. The big key difference here is that it's in 2.5D, and you can combine any abilities that you want. This is super cool because, well, the concept itself is just fun, and because you'll never predict what the combinations will give you. Would you believe me if I told you that the fridge is the most broken ability because you can pull out health as much as you wanted? Exactly! This game is filled to the brim with creativity and charm. The only real issue with it is, once again, the pacing. This particular game runs very slow, and you really feel it drag the deeper in you get. The crystal shards are just your typical collectible, and most of them aren't that hard to get. But there's a small handful of them that force you to get a specific ability from some other level, and then you gotta bring it to that level just to get the shard. That wouldn't really be that big of a deal if the game moved faster, but instead it feels like a massive slog. Not every crystal shard is like this, of course, but the ones that are can be particularly peeving. But even so, this isn't a very long game to get through. After destroying the mid-bosses in literally 3 seconds, which is always funny, and taking out dark matter once again, I managed to 100% Kirby 64 in 5 hours and 23 minutes. This was a fun game to revisit, as it's another one I grew up with, but the pacing has aged poorly. But fear not. Next up is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. To 100% this one, I need to explore all 272 rooms in all 10 areas, press all 15 big switches, find all 80 treasure chests, and pull all 4 levers. The sub-games are, again, not required, but I'll play those anyway for fun. Now, this game. Oh man, this game. I still remember my dad getting this for me at the store when I was like 12 years old, and I was beyond hooked. Amazing Mirror is unlike every other mainline Kirby title, since it's a Metroidvania where you have to find a bunch of different secrets in a massive interconnected world. I've always wanted to 100% this game, and it's exciting to finally have the opportunity to do so. Before diving into the main title, I tried out the sub-games first, and they're just alright. I've always liked Kirby Wave Ride, but there isn't much to write home about. Now, the biggest change I've noticed immediately was the movement. Finally, I'm playing a Kirby game where I feel like I'm actually running around at a fast pace. The entire game is super fluid and is just a blast to simply run around in. With that said, Amazing Mirror can be extremely confusing without some sort of map. The game does provide you with a map technically, but all you get are these squares. When you find the big switch for the right area, you do get more details and you can see which rooms are complete or not. Orange means the room hasn't been entered, yellow means it has, and blinking yellow means you found all the secrets. So it's slightly more useful, but not by much. So instead, I found maps online that show the actual details in all the rooms. However, since I was starting the game late into the day, I decided to just kind of wing it. Everyone is going to make progress in a completely different way, so it just seemed like the best option. The only bad thing I have to say about Amazing Mirror is that you lose your ability after one hit. That can be pretty annoying sometimes, especially if you need to hold that ability to unlock some obscure area, but it's usually not that big of a deal. I was just ecstatic to be playing one of the greatest Kirby games of all time. And let's not forget the smash abilities in this game, and you have to eat Master Hand to get it. I mean, come on, how can you not love Amazing Mirror? I played for about an hour and then took a rest. I was really pumped for the next day since I could finally fulfill a long-lost childhood dream. And another day has begun. This time, I busted out all the maps and started to follow them more closely. I basically tried to use them in tandem with the in-game maps, and it made it easier to get around. Although there were times where I still got pretty lost. There's some areas in the game that have no real entrance, but still have doors to get in and out. I know that doesn't really make sense, so I'll try to show you what I mean. Here we have two different rooms that I need to get to still, but look at the entrances. It just says to Rainbow Road, but with no indication on how to actually reach these areas. And then the in-game map sure as hell isn't helping either. So what I've got to do in this circumstance is pull up the in-game map, look for text that says the area I'm looking for, so in this case, Area 2, and then just take one of those doors randomly and hope it leads me to the right way. That is the only way to get here, which is kinda dumb. Thankfully, most of the game isn't handled like this, so it was kind of a fun puzzle to figure out. It's also nice that you can push a button to just warp back to the hub world, so at least you can get around the game fairly easily if you take the wrong path by accident. A lot of people also complain about Peppermint Palace, and it's an icy area, so I get it. Playing through the game is fairly manageable, but getting the collectibles is another story. A large chunk of them are put in really obscure spots, and they'll force you to backtrack through several rooms multiple times over to collect everything. I honestly found it pretty fun, but I can understand why it would be a hassle for others. After several hours though, I checked all the maps and found that I had collected everything and been everywhere. After destroying Dark Mind and watching the credits roll instantaneously for some reason, I managed to beat Kirby in the Amazing Mirror in 7 hours and 19 minutes, which is actually a lot faster than I anticipated. The maps really did make a big difference. It was so satisfying to finally explore this entire game. So after that, I moved on to Kirby Squeak Squad. To 100% this one, I need to beat the main game and collect all 120 treasures. This is the last so-called short Kirby game that I'll be playing. And it's a pretty strange one as well, mainly because it doesn't alter the art style very much from Amazing Mirror. And it's also a traditional Kirby game that has actual levels. Well, I say levels, even though some of them have super awkward design. Like, I'm not even kidding. Some of these levels end in like 10 seconds and then it's over. Squeak Squad also lets you combine abilities, technically speaking, but only a select few. So yeah, Squeak Squad is a really odd game in the franchise, but this is another one I owned as a kid and have some nostalgia for. The treasures usually aren't too hard to find either. In fact, they're actually stored in your belly for the duration of the level, which is what the bottom screen is for. You can hold up to 5 different things at once. While it's cool you can do this, it also feels really really limiting. It's very easy to fill up on items, so you have to conserve your space pretty often. Oh, yeah, and there's also like the Squeak Squad, I guess they're a thing I should mention. They're pretty much the only tough part of the game. If you get hit when they show up, then they'll take your treasures. This can be a little annoying, but if you fight them back, then it's possible to re-grab your goods. It's also such a shame with what's happened to King DDD. Just a couple days ago, he was giving me the sweats, but now I can destroy him by standing in place and blowing some ice breath at him. What happened to you, buddy? But I did have some issues with this bird. You know what? High jump it is. Excuse me, did you just grab me from the top of your head? You also gotta love how the entire premise of this game is about Kirby getting his piece of shortcake stolen. I'm not even kidding. That is literally all Kirby is trying to get back. That's incredible. But after beating Dark Nebula, I finished Squeak Squad in 5 hours and 22 minutes. And you know what? Now that I've replayed it, I can safely say that, yeah, this game's pretty underwhelming. It's probably worth playing if you're a big fan of Kirby, but it could definitely be skipped. I really don't have much else to say about it. It's just another Kirby game. And that was all I did today, as tomorrow begins our descent into the long-ass Kirby titles. I was still filled with energy and was roaring to continue further. We're starting things today with Kirby's Return to Dreamland. To 100% this game, I need to beat the main and extra game, collect all 120 energy spears in both of the games, clear all 7 challenge stages, and complete the arena in the true arena. Now, I'd like to preface that this game is pretty solid. It got a remake on the Switch and is one of the most beloved Kirby titles. It looks nice and it controls decently enough, but I don't think I'm the only one of the opinion that this and the next few games in this marathon are very akin to the new Super Mario Bros. Titles. The next 4 Kirby games all look and sound the same, but have a few differences here and there. Although Planet Robobot, well, maybe that one's a bit of an exception to the rule. And unfortunately, this means we've also returned to the slower paced gameplay. Rest in peace to the GBA and DS goats that were faster. I'm gonna miss ya. You don't know how much I'm gonna miss you. Now that I'm over halfway through these games, I'm really starting to get tired of how slow the pacing is. This has led me to experiencing an extreme amount of tedium for a large portion of this marathon. Basically, the way it's gonna go now is that any Kirby game from this point forward was really boring up until the last couple worlds when the difficulty picks up a bit. But on the bright side, I am a little ahead of schedule, considering I expected to still be playing Squeak Squad today, so I'll take that. But here we are with Return to Dreamland in the flesh. At this point, I might as well bring up what actually stands out. We're supposed to collect 3 to 5 energy spears per level, and just about all of them are easy to reach. It's more time consuming when you're actually going for the spears outside of just playing the game, but the levels are well optimized so that any specific abilities you need to reach them will always be in the same area. There's also these cool black and white segments where this sort of black hole-like wall thing will kind of push you forward. We've also got super abilities, which are basically just really fancy screen wipes. So I guess with that, we could conclude that there's enough here that makes the game stand out. But the thing is that I've already played this a couple times in the past, so that really made this feel like a slog at first. But that's not all that happened. Today was the first day that OBS started to crash over and over again, so that's fun. I locally record this footage while streaming it, but for whatever reason, today was the day that OBS decided it should start randomly freezing and corrupting all my footage. I tried fixing it and tweaking the settings, but nothing was working, and it became a prevalent issue for several days. And you just gotta love how this was happening when I started Return to Dreamland 2, just so I could spend a little extra time playing this. But anyway, I was chugging through the main game and made my way to the final boss. I honestly forgot half the things that happened during it. You fight an entire ship, and then Magalore pops the hell off. I mean, good lord, look at these crazy attacks he's doing. This man clearly wants me dead, yet is a playable character 3 games later. Wow, that makes no sense. But hey, I managed to beat him, and yippee yahoo, I get to do that again! And I mean literally all of it again. Extra game is the same thing, but now I have less health, and I still have to collect the energy spears despite getting them already. Come on. But before doing that, I decided to play through the challenge stages since they don't take very long. There's only 7 of them, and thankfully, I only need to clear them to get a 100% save file. Getting gold medals would take a long time since these stages are tough to beat fast, but they're pretty fun. I really love the idea of having ability-specific stages. I really wish Kirby Games would do this more often because it allows them to build a deeper level around said ability and force a player to stretch the limits with that ability. Next, I decided to tackle the arena. Now, I've previously struggled with this mode, as we all know, but that is no longer an issue, and that's in all due part to the tornado. If you spam this attack over and over again, you will almost never get hit by anything. There's a very brief moment when you're vulnerable, but for the most part, you're completely invincible to all attacks. That means I was able to breeze through the arena in the cheesiest way possible, and it was pretty goofy to watch. There's a reason why this item wasn't included in the 3DS titles, because it's just way too overpowered. But after that, I finally started the extra game, and it's virtually the same experience. Was it a little bit harder because I had less health? I mean, yeah, sure, I guess I had to be a little more careful of how I was playing, but because it's still easy to rack up lives, it felt like I was just playing the exact same game over again. What was nice, though, was that I didn't have to constantly pause to check where energy spears were. I remembered where almost all of them were, which did speed up things a little bit. It's also worth mentioning that those enemies that run while holding the key up, yeah, you know that guy, they move a lot faster this time, so at least that was more challenging. And technically, the super ability timer is shorter, but that doesn't really make much of a difference when you're actually playing the game. The bosses are also a bit harder and have different color palettes, but again, it's not a significant change. The only notable boss worth mentioning is Fatty Puffer, because for whatever reason, he has like 50 new attacks and is like way faster than before. I'm not complaining about this, I'm just surprised at the difficulty spike. But I gotta be real, I'm pretty goddamn brain dead at this point. Playing both modes back to back has been mentally exhausting, so I was making a lot of really stupid mistakes. I was hoping to finish the extra game today, but I was so wiped that I ended the day early and would wrap Return to Dreamland up tomorrow. It was on this day that I realized the rest of the marathon was gonna be one massive slog. Ah, much better. I feel refreshed and ready to go. First things first, it was time to wrap up the extra game since there wasn't that much left to do. The only thing really worth mentioning is there's another phase in the final boss, and this time it's Magolor's soul. The Kirby franchise really likes souls, by the way. This won't be the last time we fight a soul, so you better get used to that. Some of these attacks, too, are just absurd. There are so many different patterns that you have to learn in order to survive, and I'm a huge fan of that. It's just strange that Kirby Games feel the need to offer a challenge at the bitter end exclusively. Magolor's Soul was a fun boss to beat, so all I had left to do was play the challenge stages again and take on the true arena. The main difference with the true arena is you fight all the harder versions of the bosses, but once again, it doesn't matter. I have the tornado, so I just win. And with that, Return to Dreamland is finally over and was completed in 14 hours and 38 minutes. I'm pretty glad to be done with this if I'm being honest, because I have fond memories with Triple Deluxe. And speak of the devil, that's the next game. Whoa! To 100% this one, I need to beat the main game, collect all 100 Sunstones, 256 keychains, clear DDD Tour, DDD's Drum Dash, the Arena, and the True Arena. And I also need to beat Kirby Fighters with all 10 copy abilities. Now, you may have noticed that the requirements are pretty similar to Return in Dreamland. In fact, the game itself looks pretty similar. The art style hasn't really changed, the overall pace is the same, there's really not many differences. This is what I'm talking about when I say that these 4 Kirby games have the same energy as the new Super Mario Bros. Series. Now, obviously, each Kirby game has more changes, this one being Kirby's Hypernova ability. What this gives us is a Rainbow Kirby with an even more powerful suck. He can eat entire trees now, and random parts of a stage like it's nothing. This mechanic is also used for a few different puzzles. So, yeah, there you go, that's the big crazy new feature. But thankfully, there's a lot less collectibles to find in each stage. We've got significantly less Sunstones to grab compared to the Energy Spears, and only 1 rare keychain per stage. We'll go over the keychains in more detail later, but for now, I need to make some good headway in Triple Deluxe. And just like last time, the first 70 to 80% of the campaign was a snooze fest because it was so easy. But at least there were a decent amount of changes. Like the puzzles, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of them also use motion controls, and they don't feel tacked on. Oh, and I should also mention that I had even more stream crashes today, which is just so amazing and fantastic. In fact, the crashes got so bad that by day 8, I just stopped streaming entirely. I feel bad that I couldn't stream the entire thing, but the amount of crashes that were happening felt unacceptable, and I didn't have time at that moment to really break down what the problem was, so I do apologize to those of you that were watching the streams. Thanks again. Next time, I'll have a setup that should prevent crashes from happening to begin with. Because of the crashes and monotony of the game, I had to take a brief break and play something else. Oh, no, not playing another game entirely. Oh, hell no, I don't got time for that. I meant one of the sub-games. I decided to switch to DDD's Drum Dash. I need to clear all 4 stages, and it's this neat little rhythm game where you have to time button presses to the beat of DDD jumping off these drums. It sounds simple, but the way it works isn't how you'd expect. On top of timing button presses, you'll get different amounts of height depending on how many consecutive presses you get, and you also need to move DDD forward. I actually had a bit of trouble with the last stage, seeing I need to have super specific jumps to get around the Gordos and other enemies without getting hit. And the timing itself just doesn't feel that accurate either. And this is coming from a guy that's spent thousands of hours playing Guitar Hero, so I'm super familiar with rhythm games. It's kind of neat that Triple Deluxe has more in-depth sub-games, but this one is just okay. I'd rather play something like Rayman Legends if I really want rhythm-based platforming. After beating that, I went back to the main game and man, these levels get so long. If you thought they were long in Return to Dreamland, dude, the ones in Triple Deluxe can take up to 10 to 15 minutes apiece. What is this, Sonic Unleashed? I must have suppressed the length of these levels from when I played this originally a decade ago, because my god, do they take a while to get through. And then there's Pyribbit. Oh my god, this stupid frog spends 90% of the time in the background trying to attack me. Like, bro, come on, be a man and attack me head on. What is this, a Sonic Superstars boss fight? Alright, I'd like to apologize to the Sonic fans out there. I'll stop dissing him because I do like Sonic, okay? I'm sorry. Anyway, eventually, I got to the final parts of the game, and this is where things get cool. You eat Wispy Woods and strip steel off a tank. You fight Masked DDD, and Queen Sectonia is a pretty badass final boss. I mean, look at this. Kirby over here just eating the laser and then spits it back at her. Bro, Kirby has no chill. No chill. And wow, there we go. That's the end of the main game. But I'm definitely not done yet. There's still a lot of extra things to work on. I needed a few extra sunstones, so I grabbed those real quick, and that was it. Well, that was it for today. I spent so long playing this that I wasn't actually able to finish it, and I need to continue tomorrow. So while my day was over, the night had just begun. Keychains! Let's talk about getting all 256 of these things. I currently have 128, and there's 2 ways to get them. I can replay levels over and over, joy, or I can use Street Pass coins. Street Pass coins, if you don't remember, are coins you earn by walking around with your 3DS, or by shaking it if you're lame, there's also that. Now, this is really good news. I can save time by spending my Street Pass coins on these keychains so I don't have to replay levels. The only problem is I have a grand total of 0 coins, which left me with no choice but to hustle. Wow, I sure am tired today. Woo, all that running around, maxing out my Street Pass coins. Woo, that sure was exhausting. But look at that, we've got 300 now. It was time to start grinding my Street Pass coins and nabbing keychains faster than you can say. Wait, what? Hold on, what was that? You can get 5 keychains at a time, complete a stage if I want to get more. Are you kidding me? Weird. Okay, so I can use Street Pass coins 5 times in a row, then I have to play a level again before using the Street Pass coins again. Well, I guess this is still faster than grinding out levels, but it's pretty dumb that I'm forced to do this. So let's hold off on the keychains for now. I decided to tackle DDD's tour first. This is kind of like the extra game in Return to Dreamland, except that you play as DDD the whole time, and each world has its levels connected together in little chunks. Thankfully, I don't need to get sunstones or rare keychains. I was just trying to speedrun through the levels as fast as possible. It can be satisfying to plow through the levels, but I don't know. I think I'd rather do this with Meta Knight or something. Meta Knight at least moves a lot faster, while DDD is a bit of a clunky fella. But hey, we got to fight Shadow DDD, and he's a really cool guy. So when that was over with, I decided to tackle the arena. This wasn't nearly as hard as the older games. I just used hammer and got through it with relative ease. The true arena, on the other hand, is a different tale. Not only is every boss tougher, but they're also longer and we have way less health in between bouts. Unfortunately, I can't be super cheesy and use the tornado because it's not in this game, but don't you worry, if there's a will to cheese, then there's a way. I was informed by the chat that ducking as the archer makes you completely invincible. And when I say completely, I mean that to the fullest extent. It's not like guarding where you take tiny morsels of damage. No, you literally take 0 damage. So what this means is that I was able to duck for every single boss and do pop shots along the way. As you can imagine, this took a pretty long time, but it got me through the true arena and prevented me from spending a few extra hours trying to beat it normally. It was honestly really funny by the time we got to the end. Queen Sectonia had this new phase I'd never seen before, and she had almost no openings, so I had to do so much waiting in between hits. This really wasn't a battle of will, it was a battle of sheer patience. I mean, I probably could have just fought her normally at that point, but hey, I had already committed my life to Archer and I wasn't going to give it up that easily.
Oh shit.
Also, take notice that she's called the Soul of Sectonia. Oh, you thought I was kidding about that soul obsession, huh? We're not over with souls yet. After that, I started Kirby Fighters and needed to play this 10 times in a row. One victory for each different copy ability. This is basically like Smash Bros. Classic mode, but a lot more simplified. It was pretty fun the first few times, but by the time I got to the last couple of characters, I was really bored of this mode. Again, I don't know why every copy ability should count towards 100%, but Nintendo got a Nintendo. Speaking of Nintendo, they announced a direct partner showcase today. Woo! Oh, the fans most certainly won't have high expectations. We definitely won't see L or mid in my chat when it's streamed a couple days from now. But anyway, all that's left is some keychain gaming. Now that I've done all the other modes and got some extra keychains, I really didn't have that many left. So I started the farm. Use Street Pass coins 5 times in a row. Replay World 1, 2, and repeat. Something that's really bizarre about the keychains is that even when I was getting close to collecting them all, I was still getting a lot of new ones fairly frequently. You would think that I would get more duplicates with the more of them that I own, but that just wasn't the case. In fact, it only took me about an hour and a half of grinding before I finally had all 256 keychains. It's pretty relieving to see Nintendo make the keychain unlock system more forgiving than I perceived it to be. And that was it. Kirby Triple Deluxe took me 17 hours and 39 minutes to complete. This is a game I would have been fine never getting 100% in, but it was kind of neat to see what all the keychains were, so I'll give it that. Since grinding didn't take as long as I thought it would, I was able to start Kirby Planet Robobot. To 100% this one, I need to beat the main game, collect all 100 code cubes, 200 stickers, clear Meta Nightmare Returns, the arena, the True Arena, Kirby 3D Rumble, and Team Kirby Clash. Now, you may have noticed that these requirements are almost exactly the same as Triple Deluxe. Instead of sunstones and keychains, we need to get code cubes and stickers. Ooh, different. Yeah, it functions exactly the same as Triple Deluxe, except there's less stickers to get. And the other side modes are similar too, but have also been improved a lot. We'll get to those later on. For today, I just wanted to make a little bit of headway into Planet Robobot. While this game once again looks exactly like Triple Deluxe, its mecha suit mechanic saves it and makes it stand out on its own. Transforming into a mech is not only kind of badass, but you can also use the other abilities with it. So similar to how the Animal Friends function from Dreamland 2 and 3. Turning into a robot is just pure fun at its core, and it made the game a lot more enjoyable. The levels are also better designed, have more diverse locations, and the puzzles are more thoughtful. The level size is also a lot better too. There's no 20-minute gauntlets at the end of the game. Everything is just nicely condensed. As you can tell, I'm a huge fan of this game, but at the same time, it's still really easy. So the Kirby boredom still set in, and I only got through the first world before ending for the day. Well, it's that time of the marathon. You know what's coming. The exhaustion of this much hardcore gaming is really starting to set in. I'm glad I was on Planet Robobot because it's a unique Kirby title, but I was definitely starting to feel a bit fatigued from this much playing. Something else I realized is that almost every Kirby game I've played has a shooter section in it. So that got me wondering, why on earth hasn't there been a spin-off game that's completely dedicated to being a space shooter? I mean, think about how awesome that could be. Imagine you're going through a bunch of different waves, and instead of shooting enemies, you can scan them and take their abilities. And maybe you could even use their abilities to take alternate paths to add some replay value. I don't know, just throwing that out there, a Kirby-themed space shooter has a ton of potential. As for the game itself, well, it's got a lot of cool moments. Like I was saying before, using the mech suit changes the gameplay quite a bit. I really love when they use the wheel mech, because you can just flip from the foreground to the background whenever the hell you want. Oh, and then there's this casino level. Yeah, this is my jam. You whack a pool ball that smacks into a pile of pool balls to get a treasure. That's just sick. And you want to know what else was nice? This game was going by fast. And I mean, I was cooking through it. I don't know if it's just because I was more engaged with it compared to Triple Deluxe, but man, I was schmoovin' through these levels. They just seemed to be a lot less bloated than before. And next thing I knew, I was at the final boss. I ate that goddamn halberd and started taking down Stardream. This boss fight is just so cool. I love that you control the entire ship and go ham on the boss. And it's pretty hard too. There's so many different phases, and the way you have to take him down is super creative. So I ended up finishing the main game, but still had a good amount to do. The first thing I tackled was Kirby 3D Rumble. Thankfully, it's super bare bones and takes like 10 minutes to get through. It's basically just a precursor for Kirby in the Forgotten Land, but it's kind of neat, I guess. After that, I started Meta Nightmare, and I'm sure now you can guess how this works. You play condensed versions of the stages as fast as possible, yada yada yada, but now I'm using Meta Knight. It was honestly a lot more fun compared to DDD and Triple Deluxe, and it went by faster too. So after plowing through Meta Nightmare, I started up Team Kirby Clash. I needed to get through a handful of levels, and I found it to be a lot better than Kirby Fighters. That's because it has an almost RPG-like mechanic to it. You can level up your power, speed, defense, and things like that. The final level was really kicking my butt, so I needed to replay a few of the easier stages to level up. And once I did that, I finished this mode with no problems. At first, I was a healer and just kept spamming heal pools, but it just wasn't working out. So I eventually figured out that the hammer does crazy damage and was able to deal heavy attacks using that. All that was left now was the arenas and stickers. I decided to go all in on the hammer for the arena because it's so powerful. And that was it for the day. It's actually kind of insane how far ahead I am right now. I expected to be playing Planet Robobot all day tomorrow, but here I am with a 96% save file. Well, I'll be damned. All that's left to do is beat the True Arena and get the rest of the stickers, and I decided to save it for tomorrow since I was already pretty tired. It was direct day in the morning, so I was gonna need to watch that as well. It's that time of the month again. The Direct Partner Showcase is here. Yay! Ah, man, I was just so excited about it. It was taking place when I would normally wake up, meaning I was sleep deprived today. Ooh, yeah! Anyway, I streamed the Direct since the likelihood of a crash was much smaller without locally recording, and I thought it was alright. A new Monkey Ball game was announced, so that's really all I needed. I think it's pretty obvious that after watching that Direct, that the Switch 2 is coming pretty soon, since Nintendo doesn't seem to have much on their calendar. But anyway, after that, I dove right into finishing Planet Robobot. And it's time to tackle the True Arena. I figured that I could try the hammer first, and if that didn't work, then I could just use cheesy archer strats like last time. So as you'd expect, the True Arena is hard as hell and I didn't make it that far, so Archer came in clutch, and I slowly but surely got through all the bosses while avoiding almost every attack. What I didn't realize is just how long the final portion of True Arena is. First off, I can't even use Archer here because I'm doing the space shooter section, and Stardream, Soul OS, ooh, there it is again, Soul, they take a lot of hits. If you aren't already absorbing his attacks, it's going to take an absurdly long time to get through them. But once you finish them, there's another phase where you have to fight a huge heart. This isn't too bad to get through, but oh man, I gotta talk about the ending. Let's just say that I wasn't aware of what was coming. This stupid Soul OS heart has a freaking one-hit KO laser after you defeat him. Are you being for real? So guess what? I had to play it all over again. And after a couple of hours, I finally got through the true arena. That was a massive pain in the ass, and thank God for the amiibo, because I did use a couple to save a bit of time. Look, I know it's extra cheesy to use amiibo, but my goal here is to get through these games as fast as possible, so I'm going to use whatever the game offers me. But after that beast of a battle, I just needed to get the rest of the stickers. It was the same process as before. Run a marathon to get Street Pass coins, and then just go back and forth between playing a level and using the coins. There was one weird change though that I've never seen anyone mention. In Triple Deluxe, you can mash A to skip the animation of Kirby eating the coins, but you can't skip the animation in Planet Robobot. It's not that much of a time waster, I just thought it was a bit odd, that's all. At this point, the lack of sleep is really setting in. How on earth am I gonna stay awake for one of the most bland Kirby games of all time? I ended up finishing Planet Robobot in 14 hours on the dot, which was way faster than I could have ever imagined finishing it. I also got this really cool exclusive performance video for getting 100%. It's like a music video of President Haltman's theme song, but it has lyrics, but you don't actually hear them say the lyrics. It's very bizarre, but a neat unlockable. So now it's time for Kirby Star Allies. This one is a doozy to 100%, so let's just jump into it. I need to beat the story mode, collect all 42 rare picture pieces, hit all 13 big switches, complete the ultimate choice in all difficulties, complete Heroes in Another Dimension and get all 120 friend hearts, complete one run of Guest Star Star Allies Go, and get 3rd place in Chomp Champs and Star Slam Heroes on the hardest difficulty. That is a lot to tackle, and you may have noticed that I'm going farther than just 100%. Star Allies got a lot of updates in its first year, and it ended up adding a couple modes that made the game insanely difficult. So yes, I'm gonna be going for Crown Percent, even though it's not really necessary. The only things I won't be exploring are the exclusive DLC stages for the Dream Friends. I considered doing that, until realizing that their campaigns are mostly just the same levels over again, but with a couple of new stages in there, and they don't even add to the save file, so I decided to skip it. Now this game, well, it is definitely a Kirby game. It was doing a great job nodding me to sleep. Like, I legitimately was struggling to keep my eyes open the first few hours. A combination of Kirby fatigue, and then playing frickin' Star Allies was so unbelievably tedious to sit through. And guess what? The Side Order DLC came out for Splatoon 3, and all I could do was think about playing that since I've been wanting to play that DLC for over a year at this point, but I'm just gonna have to wait. It's officially become my motivation to finish this marathon as fast as possible. But, okay, what does Star Allies offer that's unique? Let's see. We've got Dream Friends. Yeah, you can throw a heart at an enemy, and now they're friendly, and that's kind of... Oh, wait. They did that in Kirby Superstar. Okay, well, let's see. There's 4-player co-op. That's something, but... Oh, wait. They did that in Return to Dreamland. Oh, but wait, you can play as these animal buddies. Okay, now that's... No, wait. Dreamland 2 and 3 had that. Well, that's all I got. This game feels like an expansion pack of the other 3 Kirbys I've already played, and I am so sick of it. They all play and feel the same, and it got to the point where I had to take an actual break.
Spaghetti.
Ah, that nap caught me up on sleep, so now I can continue to tackle Star Allies. Or so I wish. I actually slept for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, so I'll just have to suffer and try my best to stay awake. Finding the picture pieces and big switches were simple at least, but it really just felt like I was playing the same goddamn game again. The only difference is that it looks a little bit better. One of the most mind-numbing parts of Star Allies is the frame rate. A lot of these games run in 30 FPS, which is fine for a platformer, but we're teased 60 FPS the whole way through. Everything in this game, except the actual game, runs at 60 FPS, so it just makes playing Star Allies feel that much more slow when we're constantly reminded of a faster frame rate. I should reiterate here that I'm really not much of a stickler for FPS, but it would have been nice if the pacing was at least a little bit faster. Since I was so far ahead of schedule, I actually decided to end the day pretty early so I could actually catch up on more sleep. Alright, I'm feeling way better today. No stupid direct ruining my sleep schedule, I was ready to potentially finish Star Allies today. or at the very least make a ton of progress. I got a little over halfway through the main game yesterday, so I still had quite a ways to go. It's so weird how the last world was like half of the game's levels, and the first 3 worlds are tiny. I'm not really sure why it was spaced out like that. Now, I'm gonna come swinging for a second. I hate to be the guy with the hot takes, but this game was mostly praised for how much fan service it has. And while it does include a ton of older and some obscure characters, I honestly think it just hurts Star Allies more, especially when it comes to the bosses. Almost all of them are reused but have a few different types of attacks. Now, I understand that this is a Kirby game. In the Kirby franchise, it makes sense to have recurring bosses. There's nothing really wrong with that, as a lot of Kirby titles get really creative with how they reimagine their characters and bosses, but Star Allies doesn't do nearly enough to stand out. Wispy Woods just jumps in the air a few times, like, okay, who cares? Then Kracko, he splits into 2, and then there's a big version of him. Ooh, how inspiring. And of course, they bring back Pawn and Khan, and the only change here is the harder version has more paths. So while it's really neat to be able to play as Magolor and Tyranza and they all have unique attacks, that in turn makes the game even easier. It just makes Star Allies all the more boring. And I hate to say that because I am a pretty big Kirby fan, but holy shit, this is the safest Kirby game of all time, and it really shows now that I've played them all back to back. But after playing for a while, I finished the main game and started tackling the other side modes. First up was the Ultimate Choice. Now, I know it might sound like some crazy new thing here, but it's just the arena again. The big difference is having a difficulty slider, which is honestly the thing that this mode needed. The arena has been getting repetitive anyway, so I really like this change. I basically needed to play all the difficulties, so I quickly plowed through all that. Next was the guest star mode thing, and this is the same thing as Meta Nightmare where you just play condensed levels as fast as possible. You already know the drill, except now you can get stat boost, which in the most minor way possible changes the gameplay. Yeah, it was a snooze fest. Let's just move on. Next, we got the sub-games, Star Slam Heroes and Chop Champs. They took about 5 minutes each, and just like that, we've got a 100% save file. Although we're not done yet. Heroes in Another Dimension was up. And guess what? This is the best part of the entire game. Yeah, these levels are just like the challenge stages in Return to Dreamland, but better fleshed out and way more interesting to tackle. I actually had to replay a handful of stages because I kept missing friend hearts, so it was nice to actually be stimulated by the gameplay. These were really fun, and I have to reiterate again that I wish levels that focused on one ability were integrated with the main story in Kirby titles. That'd be perfect. The extra bosses were also surprisingly hard, and the ending was insane. You fight all 3 of the Mage Sisters at the same time, and it's just complete chaos. Like, I have no idea what's happening on the screen. Like, just look at it. It's just lasers everywhere. After finishing that, all I had left to do was Soul Melter X. Tomorrow. Yeah, I might as well save it for tomorrow since I've heard this is the hardest Kirby battle in the entire franchise. I don't have much else to report on because these Kirby games are pretty down to the numbers. Every extra feature Star Allies has was already included in older titles, so I just don't have much to expand on. But that's okay, because we're gonna wrap this sucker up tomorrow. This is it. It's time to face Soul Melter Extra. After putting in the secret code, even Kirby is surprised I'm doing this. Just look at him. Ooh, oh, look at that. It's got the word soul in it. Yeah, that's how we know the game isn't playing around anymore. Got some soul action. As you'd expect, all the hardest bosses are included, and good lord, this actually took me quite a while. Even with a full set of Dream Friends helping, expect to take heaps of damage and then be dry on health before you know it. If Star Allies didn't have Amiibo, I would have spent the entire day just trying to beat Star Melter X. But it does, so I did use a couple of them near the end. But even so, this was still really stressful to play. The only way you can clear this comes down to learning the boss patterns, just like every other arena. And the final battle is also just absurd. Now, I didn't bring up Void Termina previously because it wasn't that interesting, but this extra version really kicks it up a notch. You go back and forth shooting down this boss and fighting the soul inside of him. All the attacks are frantic and hard to avoid, especially in this last phase. I mean, just look at the crap being thrown at me. I completely get why people say Soul Melter X is the hardest of all the Kirby arenas. Just this final battle is 4 phases long, and all of them, except the second one, take practice. But after several attempts, I managed to clear Soul Melter X and get that sweet, sweet crown percent on the save file. Star Allies took a total of 13 hours and 33 minutes to 100%, and I am not at all surprised at how long I had to play this one. which means that, oh my god, we're already at our last game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. To 100% this one, I need to beat the game with all 300 Waddle Dees, complete every Treasure Road stage, fully evolve all copy abilities, complete all the cups in the Coliseum, complete the Frenzy Gig difficulty for the Waddle Dee Cafe Help Wanted, complete all 3 levels for Tilt and Roll Kirby, catch Bling Blipper and Flash Fishing, fully upgrade the stage for the Deadly Dees, and finally collect all 256 Gotcha Machine figures. I know that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but I'm okay with that. Because finally, we're playing a Kirby game that's different and really tries to innovate itself. As you can see, it's in 3D. The funny Nintendo guys finally gave us what we wanted. You can turn into cars and all sorts of wacky objects, and the unlockables are a lot better. Instead of just finding some random thing in a level, a lot of times you have to complete a specific objective, so it's a lot like Dreamland 3. But unlike that game, Forgotten Land will actually notify you and keep track of what Waddle Dees you found. You aren't directly told how to get all of them, but even the missions that are hidden can still be done in one go if you already know where to look. What that means is that I was able to get through all these levels in one fell swoop, and thank God for that. These levels can sometimes take a while, but just the fact that we're in 3D and it feels different to play made this so much more enjoyable. And copy abilities have finally been properly realized since you can upgrade them this time. If you find blueprints in the levels, you'll take them to this workshop and then spend coins and rare stones to upgrade the ability to make them stronger. I absolutely love this system, and they need to keep doing it for the foreseeable future. And then we have Treasure Road, which are mini levels that are based on abilities or transformations. Wow, it's like this game has answered literally all of my feedback from the past few days. Thanks, Nintendo. And would you look at those bosses? They're actually really creative and a ton of fun to fight. Man, I am in such a better mood now that we're at the tail end. I can already see that side order DLC on my television screen. Oh, I am so close to victory. So now that all that praise is out of the way, I gotta be honest again. Look, this isn't even the game's fault, but it still feels like I'm moving at a snail's pace. But I think it's just because I'm on Kirby game, 13? Like, at this point, my brain is just pulsating, just staring at Kirby's little feet, doing the lightest jog I've ever seen in my life, and I can't just tell him to run faster because he won't listen to my plea. It's not possible for him. Okay, maybe that was a bit much. I got fairly deep into the main game, but not even close to finishing it today. I was starting to get tired, so I decided to tackle some of the brainless stuff, like Tilt and Roll Kirby. This has 3 levels, and you just roll Kirby to the end. Then I finished the Waddle Dee Cafe game, and also caught Bling Blipper. And little did I know that this wouldn't be the last time I'd be fishing. But after doing that, I wrapped up for the day and was curious how far I'd get tomorrow. I was feeling incredibly motivated today. While it doesn't seem likely, I could potentially beat Forgotten Land 2 entire days early. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we'll just have to see how things go. Thankfully, I've already done a large chunk of the main game, so I just kept plowing through that. I started things off by getting a couple of Waddle Dees that I missed, and these came down to the boss fights. Now, I brought up earlier how fun they are in this game, but the harder ones are just a blast. There is nothing more gratifying than doing a roll dodge, watching the game slow down for a moment, and then hitting them after that quick maneuver. Kirby has had roll dodges in the past, but it's so much more dramatic in 3D. Whenever you see an enemy lunge at you, and you go your way around it, oh, it's just the best. At this point, I had most of the abilities unlocked too, and some of them are absurdly strong. The Morpho Sword and the final upgrade to the Ranger are fantastic, especially the Ranger because you can charge up a powerful Aura Blast, and it deals damage whenever something is trapped inside of it. I also love Dragonfire, because you can set anything in flames and it'll do constant damage. After plowing through all the different final bosses, tearing through Fecto Elphalus, and driving a semi-truck up dozens of buildings to have an intense mash-a-thon at the end, I was finally done with the main game. Although I still had a lot left to do, as usual. The next thing that unlocked was Forgo Dreams. As I'm sure you could recite with me by now, this condenses all the levels from a world into one, and it's just fine. The point of doing this is to collect something that Leon needs after you beat him up. And that thing is, Leon souls. More souls! So yeah, a lot of them are pretty easy to spot. What's really handy about this mode is that you're actually notified once you've collected every soul in a specific area. So you'll never be unsure if you've missed any or not, because you just wouldn't get the notification. And it made it easy to get all 300 souls. The bosses here are also a lot harder, which again is routine. I think we can all expect that. I'm getting pretty bored of Kirby Games doing this. Like, I don't know, the idea of an extra game just feels pointless. Why not just have like a difficulty setting from the get-go? Oh, hold on, wait a second. This game does have a difficulty setting, but only for an optional easy mode. This is the last game that needs an easy mode. Nintendo, you're so silly. An easy mode for Kirby. They actually did that. I mean, that's just funny. Forgo Dreams did take a pretty long time, but at least it was engaging the whole way through. Oh, and also in between that, I started the Coliseum so I could finish upgrading the abilities. Now, the Coliseum, it's this brand new mode where you'll fight a bunch of bosses in a row, and yeah, it's just the arena again. Of course it is. And this time, it doesn't have a difficulty slider. There's only 3 different versions. But whatever. I got the Meta Knight ability and was able to get the last couple Waddle Dees I was missing. And just like that, we've got all 300. Look at that. Now that's epic. I am so thrilled about these statues. Awesome. But I wasn't done with the abilities yet. Talking to King DDD gave us the blueprint for the masked hammer. Except that I don't have enough rare stones. Well, I guess I'll get it later. So, yeah, as you can see, I was kind of just flopping around and not playing in much of a coherent order. I kept getting blocked off by not having enough coins or rare stones, probably because you're not meant to play this game in a span of 2 days. But I'm doing that anyway. I finally got to the end of Forgo Dreams and was fighting off Forgo Leon with a tornado. You might assume that I can just spam it to win like with Return to Dreamland, but that does not work at all in Forgotten Land. First off, it's a much weaker weapon and takes way longer to get hits in, and you also have a much longer vulnerability time. So I was able to use it, but it's really not that great of an ability anymore. But hey, I was finally done with Forgo Dreams. This was the last big chunk I needed to knock out, which means I might actually finish this marathon today. So I went back to the arena, the Coliseum, and finished up the last 2 tourneys. There's not much to say here. We all know how these work. I also finally got the Morpho Knight sword, so I finally completed all the ability evolutions. And with that, I was also able to finish Treasure Road completely, and oh my god, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I also finished the last Coliseum tourney, which was nowhere near as hard as Soul Melter X. And can I just say, I love the name Chaos Elphalus. Man, I got a kick out of that. It's so edgy. While the secret final phase was hard, I did get it on the first try, thankfully. I also donated all my money to the Deadly D's to fully upgrade their stage, and now all that was left was the Gacha Machine figures. Thankfully, I've been playing for several hours and probably have a bunch. Oh, okay, well, maybe I have a ways to go, but that's all right. We've got a bunch of money, and I can start dumping it all into the machines, and thankfully, the unlock rarity is the same as the 3DS games, so we're getting quite a bit of new figures. The only problem now is just the cost. Volume 1 and 2 aren't too spendy, but Volume 3 is 50 coins a pop, and 4 is 100 coins. I don't have that much cash, so I'm gonna need to grind for coins. And yes, I also used my rare stars to talk to that one Waddle Dee to get a few more trophies, but now I'm flat broke. And there's no Street Pass coins for the Switch, so I couldn't run 5 more marathons. My only option was to go fishing. You might think that playing some level over and over would be faster, but no, I don't think so. If I can consistently catch the big gold guy, I get 500 coins every time for doing that. The only problem with that is the button timing can be a litlittle bit tricky. But I decided to give it a shot, and after like 10 to 15 minutes, I had the timing pretty much nailed down. I could always tell when a goldfish was coming up too. The screen slightly zooms in. And the final button press is always X, so I didn't have to guess. So basically, what I was doing was getting about 1,000 to 2,000 coins, dumping them all into the machines, and then rinse and repeating. I also found a really funny exploit online to get rare stones quickly. By jumping in the air and smashing your hammer into the ground, Kirby can get sent flying into the sky above the boundaries. Then you have to land on this corner, sneak your way inside the building, and voila, now we're inside the Coliseum from the opposite end. What happens at this point is you do one basic battle, and then it ends with you getting a rare star. This might sound like the best strategy to get the rest of the figures, but I wasn't able to do this exploit that consistently. I might have done it like, 5 or 6 times, but outside of that, I was mostly just fishing. So a couple hours have passed at this point. I was finally getting it down to the nitty-gritty. I only had a tiny amount of trophies left to get, but something bad was happening. I stopped getting new ones from all the machines, no matter how much money I dumped into it. I gotta say, I was really freaking out because I didn't know why that was happening until I looked it up and realized that I just needed to get the missing figures from other places. I had to do a few of the present codes, buy some tomatoes, and purchase more battle items. The final one I had to get was in the movie theater, and just like that, we are done. The marathon is officially over. Kirby and the Forgotten Land took me 17 hours and 24 minutes to beat. Hell yeah! You know what that means? It's side order time! Yeah, you might think I'm a little crazy to go from playing this for 12 hours to actually playing side order for a little bit on the same day, but that's exactly what I did. I'm not afraid to admit it. At this point, I've played through a bunch of the weapons, and I have some thoughts. Having a roguelike mode for Splatoon makes a lot of sense when it comes to expanding the scope of the game, and what they did here was pretty good. The goal is to climb up 30 floors and survive waves of enemies while destroying their portals, move a turbine tower, control zones, or sink these 8 balls into a station. There's also a few new bosses, and the chip system is a lot of fun to configure, seeing as it can drastically change your stats. Although, if I gotta be real, this is way too easy. Funny that we're on this topic, and the DLC itself might be a little bit overpriced because of it. I got to the top floor after only a few deaths, and I don't know, man. The Octoling expansion offered a lot more than what Side Order has, but I'm a huge Splatoon fan, and I've been enjoying it regardless. It would be great to see this expanded on a lot more whenever Splatoon 4 happens. Anyway, that went over a lot better than I expected. I thought that maybe I'd get stuck at the final chunks of these Kirby games, but as we've proven, even when going for a full completion, they're still pretty easy. But the next marathon is going to be a different story. And with that, thanks for watching.